We have a series of guests coming in, and we will hope to encourage you to find ways to help yourself and your families with the information we're going to be sharing today. So I'm your host, Annie Waters, along with Claudia Wenning, who will show up, and she's our MC, and will introduce all the speakers. Happy blessings. Let's hope for health today. Today is a day of a little bit of smoke and some heat, and we think we're going to have more of that. So we will be talking about how to help your lungs in the smoke. There'll be a number of things about that. So a little later this afternoon, Sara Grusky will be showing you how to use a vaporizer to clear the air in your space. I'm burning a vaporizer right now with pine needle essence in it, and that is known to be antiviral and antibacterial. So it's a way to make your space very much safer for everyone to breathe. Everyone in this building is wearing a mask except the speaker. We're trying to be as safe as possible today, so we want you to know that. There's going to be a replay of today, a nicely edited replay, that will be done by Andy Wright at Willits TV. And he's going to make it available on YouTube, on the Willits TV channel on YouTube in a few days. And it will also be here in Willits on your local cable channel 3, which is the Willits TV. But you can just go to YouTube and look for Willits TV and then Community Immunity. That's the name of the event. I'm also going to just tell you how the day will go. We'll have speakers for about 25 minutes each, and we'll be starting the speakers at 1:30. And each speaker will talk till almost the next half hour, and then there'll be a 5-minute break, and we will give you a chance to stretch, reach up, pick some beans, or go get some cherry tomatoes, or whatever you need to do, and come back. And Claudia will come in a few minutes and give us a nice introduction to the day, along with telling you the schedule of the speakers. So if you have questions, you could put them in the chat, and we will attempt to answer questions, and we'll also try for a question and answer session at some point. We'll see how that goes. Just for your information, this is the first Zoom thing I've ever put together, so the technology is simple. Maybe some could say primitive, except I doubt that you could say Zoom is primitive. But we're doing our best with what we know how to do, which is just basics. So thank you very much for being with us here. So Claudia Wenning is a practitioner, a local practitioner, PhD. She's going to give you her CV and talk to you about community immunity and things of that nature. Unless, Claudia, would you like some more time? Would you like me to talk about this? Or should I do that later? Yeah, I'll do this? Okay, I'll give her a little more time. So this is something we're going to make available on our community immunity page on Facebook. We're going to have lots of, or some of our handouts that we had hoped to give you in person. And this is one of them that will be there. It's a wonderful thing called 20 Tips for COVID. And it goes way beyond herbs. And it's a great opportunity to just check off how your family's lifestyle is going in this time. I know we all have a little more anxiety, perhaps a fear level, and those things are not good for our immunity. So when you go to the Facebook page called Community Immunity, you will find a place you can download files, and this will be a PDF in the file. And you could print that out for yourself if you like the idea of it. I'm going to read it to you now a little bit. I'll read a little bit from it. So we're reminded of these things. To drink plenty of good quality water. So hydration, and they say half your body weight in ounces, will help keep your immune system absolutely in top form. And eat clean foods. Eat plant-based foods and have soups that are easy to digest. Avoid sugar, which lowers your immunity. So that lovely chocolate cake, just once in a while for the chocolate cake. or whatever your sugar thing is. Immune boosting herbs, aside from what you'll hear about later in much more detail, include ginger, astragalus, echinacea, and turmeric. And I've been making myself a turmeric chai every day for actually a number of years. It has a lot of ginger and pepper, black pepper. It has ashwagandha, astragalus, and the most important ingredient is the turmeric. And it helps my inflammation, and it's helping my immune system. And I drink that, a nice cup of that every day. I make it. It's very inexpensive to make and easy to keep in your fridge. You can add medicinal mushrooms, which would be things like lion's mane for your brain, or shiitakes, chaga, all the beautiful mushrooms that we now have available in powders. Eating mushrooms is fabulous for you to put shiitakes into your soups. You can get them very easily, and oyster mushrooms. They both have a high quality protein, and they're not only nutritious, but they're also really great to boost the immune system. When you're cooking, use lots of garlic, and oregano is good. The proportion of oregano you need for immune boosting is more like a tea. You can actually go to your garden, cut some oregano out, and put it in some hot water and drink it. Drink the tea. You can also simmer it on your stove for a while, and the fumes of the oregano will be like a vaporizer and will help clear the air. Bee propolis and colloidal silver are other things. I'm sure there are many things that you would like to share with everyone too, and you can do that on the Facebook page called Community Immunity. We'd love to start a big conversation about what people know to share with each other. So some of the most important, as far as I'm concerned, the most important supplements are your vitamin D3, and you can take up to 10,000 units a day. I also take zinc, vitamin C, and quercetin on a daily basis, and all of those are helping keep the COVID cells from landing in your body. Get plenty of rest. Go out and get into the sunshine. Put your feet bare on the earth and get into the sunshine, because sunlight will give you natural vitamin D, and the UV light kills the virus. I don't know if you're aware of this, but there have been hardly any cases of COVID that have come from an outdoor contact. Almost all of it is from indoor contact, and the reason why is, one reason is the beautiful ventilation, of course, but also that the sunlight and the UV is killing viruses in the air. So I've given you those tips. That's 10 tips. Stay relaxed and manage your stress. So again, the stress and anxiety, the fear that we might all have in this time, I'm hoping that we can stay positive and find ways to meet and greet each other, as we had hoped to have this in person today at the Grange. We wanted to see each other. It was really an important thing to stand together and see each other's eyes and know that there's a lot of love in our community. So find your community, be together. That will help you manage your stress. Move your lymph. So Diane Smalley is going to come on in a little while, and she will talk about how your lymphatic system is the highway of the immune system, and you should make sure your lymph is moving. Skin brushing and rebounding, jump roping, and just plain old walking is all really, really good for the lymphatic system to keep moving and moving everything around in your body. Some people are lucky enough to have a sauna, and so red light therapy or sauna therapy will kill viruses in the air. I believe 133 degrees is a kill temperature. I mentioned walking barefoot. I'm going to just mention it again. If you can go out in the mornings and be barefoot right on the earth, that is an anti-inflammatory activity, and there's negative ions coming up from the earth, and you are recombining yourself to the earth, and your vibrational frequency and the earth's vibrational frequency will begin to correlate, and there can't be anything healthier than that. So there's a lot of breathing exercises we can do. Breathe through your nose, because the nose filters the air, and it kills the infection with nitric oxide in the nose. When I go out, sometimes I use my nasal cleanser before I go, and I even put a little bit of salve inside my nose to inhibit particles from coming in. I've been doing that for a long time for pollen. I'm not sure how well it works for viruses, but it keeps the pollen from entering my nose and going into my system. I know that. So use a good air purifier or vaporizer in your home. I have a great air purifier and a HEPA filter. I got it because of the smoke and the fires. But it's fabulous for all kinds of reasons, to keep the air clean for your family. And it also helps with the viruses in the air and the bacteria. You could take probiotics. Your gut is a major layer of the immune system, so be sure to keep your gut healthy with the right foods and use probiotics if you feel you need to. Eat yogurt, miso, kombucha. So I think I have other things to say, but the last one I'll say, and I wish I had a joke because I want you to laugh. So just turn your mouth up and you can laugh at me. I'm like a clown, and right here I'm just going to say laugh. Laugh, laugh at me, open your lungs, be happy, do all those things I just mentioned all at the same time. No stress on that. No stress, no stress. Okay, I'm going to bring Claudia in for you, and she's going to tell you more goodies and tell you what's going to happen today. Thank you so much for coming to my home. This is my dining room. Thank you for coming here, and on the dining room table that my grandfather built over 100 years ago, he milled the oak himself, and I just polished it today in his honor. And here we are sitting at the dining room table sharing our wellness tips with you. Thanks for coming. See you later.
So first of all, I of course want to thank Annie for inviting us in her home, because we tried to do this in the Little Lake Range in Willits, first outside, then inside, and obviously, I mean, the reasons are well known. We decided it is not safe, and now there's like 3 people of us in a very spacious home, and we are going to make sure that we will be masked and distancing. All right, welcome everyone. I can't really tell how many are on, but I do see several people. All right, so as I wanted to say, thank you, Leslie, for being our technical maestro in the background, because it's obvious we are all not really very savvy in doing this, but I think we'll move along just fine. So, welcome to Community Immunity, Resilience and Wellness in Our Times. This is a full day. We have 6 speakers. I will again just briefly read to you who is coming on what. As Annie said, we want you to take breaks, we want you to go to bathroom, drink water, and do everything you have to do. Okay, here we go. So I'm here already, and I'm supposed to say something again at 1:30, which is fairly soon, right? At 2 o'clock we have Autumn Whitaker, who unfortunately did have COVID, but she recovered, and we're really happy about that. And she will tell her experience and what she learned, which is really important information. 2:30 we have our local acupuncturist, Diane Smalley. She will be talking about the lymphatic system, which is one of the very important systems to strengthen our immunity as a whole. At 3 p.m. we have Sara Grusky. She's going to talk about Brunner herbal remedies and give us some wonderful instructions and inspiration. 3:30, Anna Hope is coming on. She's going to talk about ancestral herbs and anti-racism. Important theme, and she is an expert in it. And at 4 o'clock we have, last but certainly not least, our most revered local long-term herbalist and herbal teacher, Donna deTerra. She's going to talk about herbal lung support and show us how we can do this in our own kitchen. So, interesting enough, for those who don't live in Mendocino County, I was gracefully giving the local paper this morning by a friend who probably is online right now as well. And there was a beautiful article in the paper, in the Willits News, about managing stress in the time of COVID. So we are finally becoming aware of the fact that we have to take action ourselves. I hope I can be seen and heard. If not, our technical support will figure this out, I hope. Okay, so where was I? You're welcome to bring comments into the chat. I may not be able to see them because this is not possible with this computer. So we'll just keep going the best we can. What I wanted to say, so the local newspaper is bringing an article about managing stress in the time of COVID, which I think is a good sign that we're finally literally acknowledging we cannot go forward the way we have been doing this, relying on other people's assurances that this will be over soon. Because honestly, nobody knows when this will be over. Nobody. And if anybody tells you otherwise, I would say don't listen to them. So it is really up to us. And that's where resilience comes in. And I said that on our radio show too, which happened a week and a half ago when we were introducing this event, that it was coming up, that resilience is actually not a state of rigidity. Resilience is much more a state of being flexible and fluid and adaptable. So whatever happens in our lives that is really hard for us to bear and literally asks us to make changes, we have a choice. We can either ignore it or fight it, or we find solutions to adapt to it and with it, and hopefully either directly through it or around it to move on with life itself. So resilience is more the quality of our ability to adapt. And that is a very important topic to explore. Today we are doing this in regards to health, and we're doing this to show you and share with you what we think might be a possible approach and the solutions that have worked for us. There is much more to it, of course, but this is the beginning, and hopefully there is more to come. What is kind of regrettable that we are not sitting here together or being outside together, because when we came together with this idea that Annie shared with us to make this event happen, one of the emphasis was for sure that we want to share. We want to share with each other. We want to create a body of wisdom, if you will. We want to create a fundus of information that is accessible and that people can dip into and bring out that what helps them. And we wanted to have a lot of interaction and dialogue. So now we are kind of restricted to the chat. Nevertheless, as of last night, I just want to reiterate this because Annie mentioned it already. We have again gone the route of social media, since it seems to be the currently most applicable and practical. There's a new group on Facebook. It's called Community Immunity. And we will be uploading whatever information we have in PDF form on the files column, under the files column in that group. We would like you to go to Facebook and find it and join us and use the files as you see fit. They're downloadable and it is a start. If you have something you want to share, share it with the group. And this is all in the spirit of that we're all in this together. And now this is the positive aspect of that. We are here in Mendocino County, but wherever else you're coming from, we are currently celebrating being a community that literally spans the globe. You could be in Germany, you could be in South Africa, you could be in Bangkok. You could connect with us, and we can share information in a very simple way, which could really not only enhance our lives, but most importantly, strengthen our resilience and better our health. Now, that's a pretty good start, and it's all free, and it's all happening right now. All right, so now I'm going to look at my notes, and we have 125, so I have to announce myself. Oh, okay, so I'm going to announce myself now, because coincidentally I'm the first speaker, and I have a bunch of notes which I'm probably going to get off note anyhow. All right, before I start, finish that. I found them. Okay, you can't see it, but just to give a visual, so these are my recommendations I will be uploading hopefully tonight at Community Immunity. These are recommendations of supplemental support and actually some lifestyle strategies as well, and that will very much reverberate many of the points that Annie already earlier shared with you. But hey, I mean, if you have it in writing once or twice or 3 times, the more the better. I think practice makes, what's the saying? Practice makes it better. Yeah. Okay, so, for all those who are tuning in right now, my name is Claudia Wenning. I live here in Willits. My office is at the Little Lake Grange, where hopefully at some point we'll be able to go back to and have in-person events there. My business is called Quantum Level Health. I'm a holistic health consultant. I'm a naturopath. I'm a functional medicine practitioner, and so forth and so forth. And you can find everything and more out about me at my website, claudiawenning.com. And Annie had this spark of inspiration for doing this event, so she asked me to speak, and I said I want to speak about resilience and the immune system. The title is Resilience and the Immune System, a Holistic Approach. And now this is a no-brainer because this is my approach. It's holistic. So what does that mean, holistic? Holistic comes from the perception of the human body as a whole, as a beautiful collaboration of many, many parts and systems. The cardio system, the lymphatic system, the digestive system, the nervous system, lymphatic system, you will hear more about. So all these systems are separate entities and working on their own in a cyclical fashion. However, they're all interacting with each other. And that's where I have no other word than saying where we are again becoming aware of the miraculous nature of the human body itself. And we all have one. We all have an absolutely miraculous human body we're walking around with. It is a very intricate and very sensitive system. At the same time, incredible endurance. The lifespan of this human body is increasing year by year. So, though it depends how we treat it, if we really recognize it as this one unique, individual entity that we live in, then we may want to consider to really take care of it, because hey, we don't have any other one right now, we just have this one. And often there are insights and understandings how we can take care of our body that may not have been taught to us when we were growing up, because obviously there was, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 and what not many years ago. So as we go forward in evolution, our insights about how to take care of our body change, they expand, and as we are living parts of evolution itself, they evolve, and we can evolve with them, consciously or not. So let's just assume that we all collectively are interested in moving forward consciously, acutely aware of the options we have to move with evolution and move evolution forward. And I think you all signed up for that, otherwise you wouldn't spend your Saturday with us. And that goes for all the beautiful people who will take the time sometime in the future to see this video. So this is the community we have created in this very moment. It's a virtual community, but nevertheless. What if I even go so far as to say, all of you and me, we are connected with each other right now, tapping in the kindredness of our spirit. Now, that may sound a little woo-woo, and people who know me, they know I'm not woo-woo, but it's absolutely me and you, not woo-woo, but me and you, and you, and you, and you. So there we are, here we are. Okay, good. All right, why don't we take all the deep breath, and I am ready to roll. Oh yeah, okay, see, I'm clocking myself, and actually I hope somebody will tell me when to be quiet again. Not yet. Okay, I still can keep talking. All right, so have you ever spent a moment to actually ask yourself something like, what is my resilience score? Where am I at with it? Let's say there's a 0 and there's a 10. A 0 is like, oh my God, I just falter at any influence that is detrimental to my well-being. Or 10, where you would say about yourself, I can handle the storms and the hurricanes and whatever comes on. I can eat and drink whatever I want whenever I want. I'm just of exquisite resilience. Now, realistically, most of us are pretty much anywhere in between, but it is an excellent starting point. Just take a measurement. I call it measurement. Take a look. Take a look. Where do you think you're at? Where do you feel you're at? Where are you at? Once we ask this question and we allow ourselves to gauge where we stand in terms of resilience, once we allow ourselves to gauge just very gently and kindly and calmly where we stand in terms of our own health, without any expectation, it's a wonderful starting point. I think it's also called taking stock. All right, taking stock, where you're at. If you're not a 10, if you're not a 5. Make space for new input, for new understanding that ultimately might lead to very gentle lifestyle changes, but we'll get there when we get there. I think where we start is just making space for change. Once we make space for change, we're actually inviting change in, and we are inviting new information and new input in. We're making space. We're making space internally. We can make space physically. We allowing the space for new input to come in. And then we gather the input and kind of try it on for size. What may work perfectly well for your neighbor, your relative, your friend, even the person or persons you live with, may not be the right choice for you. And just the awareness of it can save you a lot of trial and error. So again, I say that many times and probably will say it again today. It is a matter of tuning in to your own needs. What do I need to feel robust, resilient, and at the most optimal state of health I can be? And that is a state that is unique to you. It cannot be compared with anyone either. We are these incredible, unique creatures, and we are the accumulation and the expression of all our genetic history and our own lifetime history and experiences. So if someone says such and such works so good for me, yeah, I'll try it, and then I'll look and I look again. How well is this working for me? Or is it actually giving me the understanding that I need something else? And that could be food, that could be lifestyle choices, that could be drinks, herbal preparations, that could be also just the little things. Taking breaks, being aware of the influences we expose ourselves during the day. So when we do this, we get a keener understanding where we are and, most importantly, where we really want to go. And this is one of, I think, fundamental questions. Even if I figure out where I am, what's going on with me, do I truly know where I want to go? And I don't mean this just physically. It actually ties back into this beautiful Japanese expression of ikigai. Where do I truly want to go with all the energies that are available to me? What at this point in time do I see as my life purpose? And what do I need physically, emotionally, and mentally to actually get there? And once I have 2 or 3 items, things, topics, themes that make sense to me, I want them in my life, I know they will help me, I know they will strengthen me, I know they will raise my own resilience score. How am I going to get them? How can I invite them into my life? And how can I express this desire in my community? Because there may be resources in my community I'm not aware of. And again, in my community, community is what we make it. There may be the community of postage stamp lovers. There may be the local community, the city, the county, the country. There may be a gender identification community. Whatever it is, we deserve to be part of as many communities as we want to. Wherever we feel a calling that this speaks to us, that is our community. And ultimately, I don't want to sound too lofty, but all of us, walking, swimming, crawling, flying, I said walking, on this planet, we have a community. We are the community of all the beings that inhabit this planet. So now I'm getting a note from someone. Louder. I'm supposed to talk louder. I'm supposed to talk louder.
And shout, which is up it a little.
Okay, I will up it a little bit. Of course, I can't see myself either, but that's all good. I know you all are there. Thank you very much. Okay, mic closer. Okay, technical wizards in the back. Am I louder or am I too loud? Thumbs up, thumbs down, anything? Okay, I'll just keep going. All right, I got the thumbs up. I see a thumbs up. I actually seen that. Oh, that's so cool. Man, I'm so far away from the screen. I'm missing all the good stuff. Okay, all right. But I'm supposed to be talking. Okay, focus, Claudia. Oh, okay. Resilience. Yeah. What I was talking about. Community. Resilience. Now, community immunity. Resilience and immunity. How do we bring this all together holistically? I'm going to tell you what I see in that theme and why I think it is worth talking about. As a naturopath, as a functional medicine practitioner, viewing the body as an entity is very important. And this entity is actually like the most intricate, never ever fabricated by any man-made outlet. It's a puzzle with so many parts, and on top of it moving parts, that I think it's truly a divine design. This is not man-made. So we are a puzzle of divine design. I like that. I just made it up. So, okay. So we're looking at different pieces of the puzzle, and ideally, at the end of the day, or whenever it seems appropriate, we want to see all these pieces of the puzzle not only fit well with each other, but also like gyrate and move and change shape and literally dance with each other, because we are a living, moving organism. I'm not the one I was like a minute ago, because everything is constantly moving. Yet I'm sitting very comfortably on this chair, and you can see me as one whole entity. So it's just all miraculous, and I'm going to stop talking like that, but I could continue because I am in awe of the human body. Proportionally equivalent to the awe I have for the human body as a limited but a very enduring perpetuum mobile, because it just keeps going and going for the whole lifetime of our lifetime. Proportional to the awe, here it comes. We want to equate our self-care in proportion to the awe we have for the human body. That would be my stipulation, and I hope some of you are of the same opinion. And again, whatever we can share with each other to facilitate that, it would be a beautiful thing. Now, what if we shine the light on self-care? What if we look at self-care we have never looked before? Because it also can mean that we are taking respectful action to keep this puzzle together. There's a beautiful image that comes out of the completed puzzle. That's me and you and everybody and everything out there, the butterfly, the caterpillar, the leaf falling from the tree. It's all of us. The community of living beings on this planet. As much as we want to create change on a larger scale, we often can't. But what we can take care of that particular piece of the puzzle that is within our reach. So, I'm definitely within my reach. That's my reach. Pretty good. So, that's where we go. If we apply a new understanding to self-care, we can now connect resilience with the various systems of the body. And the overarching system I want to mention now is the immune system. It's the guardian system, if you will, of the body. It's that system that goes in high alert when something enters the body it shouldn't be there, or even touches the body. When we are exposed to something, and now we actually have learned with the virus, and that's really not new, but it's a great reminder, we don't even have to see what touches us. We may not. Nevertheless, obviously, our system has been exposed and has been inviting something in the body, and then the body doesn't know what to do with it. The immune system constantly needs to be updated. Like that's what we say about computers, reprogram, update and all that. The immune system needs that too. The immune system, though, can only be updated and kept in tip-top shape if it's not overloaded. If the immune system is dealing with too much baggage, clutter, heavy layers, debris, day by day by day. Now imagine something else comes into our organism because we're very open. We breathe, we touch, we talk, we eat. The immune system is already in overdrive, trying to take care of all the accumulation it has to keep in check that is already in our body, in our field. If I say that doesn't really fare well for increasing resilience. We are already dealing with an immune system that is at the brink of, I've had it. What if we see and hear and know about something that is literally in the air that could affect us detrimentally? What if we now immediately, before we do anything else, turn on the inner dialogue with the immune system? Okay, check. How can I strengthen my immune system to deal with this influence? What can I alleviate? What can I let go of? What can I detox, as we say now, to make it easier for the immune system to take care of the whole sum of this load that it has to keep in check? That would be my approach, holistically. Where can I reduce exposure to chemicals, stressful situations, food that the body doesn't recognize, beverages that will tax my organs, work hours that may not really be in sync with my system, other lifestyle habits, relationships that need to experience a gentle clearing and cleansing and renewal. Cleansing is probably one of the central words there. What if we start cleansing on all layers? The physical, the mental, and the emotional. What if we take all these things out of our system that are really not enhancing our quality of life, and they're certainly not the tools to enhance resiliency? What if we do that one by one? And Annie has given some great examples, and there are many more. We just want to take stock first. What is the most aggravating immune system taxing thing we do? Staying up till midnight, being on the computer too much, having issues with the neighbors, whatever it is, knowing that you're not digesting certain foods but still eating them. That's where we start. Look at all the systems of the body. They are all in sync with the immune system. How's the digestion? How is your stress layer? How much sleep are you getting at night? How much are you exposing yourself to chemicals, electromagnetic frequencies, stressful situations, smoke, and other aspects that we have to deal with? That is where I would start. The easier you make it on the immune system to keep your body in balance, the higher your ultimate, very personal, unique resilience score will go up. So, that's what I have to say for now. It's just a little input to ponder, and please just visualize this beautiful puzzle of divine design that you truly are. And I'm out of time, so I will now actually get off the screen, and I will come back to introduce our next speaker. And I want to thank you for listening. Thank you for being here, and take a break, stretch, have some water, tea, practice self-care for a few minutes, and at the top of the hour, you will be meeting our next speaker. See you in a few. Okay.
Thank you so much, Claudia. That's awesome. I know you all were tuned in and hopefully taking notes. And remember, there will be a recording of this on the Willits cable, Channel 3, also on YouTube, on the Willits TV channel on YouTube. And you can see the recording, and it'll be nicely edited, and follow us that way. We'd love to have a community immunity conversation begin on Facebook. So we've created a Facebook page called Community Immunity, and you can post on that and let us know what you are doing to stay healthy, what you found out by helping your family. We'd love to hear very positive, solution-based stories. We're not going to offer advice or especially medical advice on that page. We're just going to say, hey, look at this. We've heard this works. And you can add to the collection there. So we begin to have an entire community conversation. What is working for people to keep themselves bright and cheery, to keep themselves healthy, to have a wonderful life in the situation we're finding ourselves in. So I really appreciate everything Claudia said. She's given me a few great reminders today, and I'm looking at the chat just to see if there's anyone that wants to say something. You got a lot of great comments, Claudia. Beautiful, Claudia. So that's wonderful. So anything else here? There's a lot of information in the chat. You know, you can save the chat and it'll come onto your computer if you don't know how to do this. And by the way, I'm leaning forward because we've got this computer way in the center of the table. If you look at the chat, you go down at the very, very bottom, there's 3 little dots in the far right corner of your entire Zoom, and it says Save Chat. And you just click that, Save Chat. You can do it as many times as you want through the chat over time, as we're here for another 3 or 4 hours. And your computer in the end will have a lovely document for you in text that you can go back and read what people have said, cut and splice some suggestions for web pages that people might have mentioned. Here's somebody named Genevieve who has told us all about wildfire smoke is linked to increase in COVID-19 cases. So it's an example of how an exterior stress has weakened our immune system and our lungs. And of course, being involved in a lot of smoke is going to cause trouble for your whole body because you're just not getting oxygen, right? You want to have that high oxygen level in the high 90s. So again, we're burning not burning exactly. We're vaporizing in here some fir needle and pine needle essential oils, which are coming and filling the room with beautiful antiviral, antibacterial scent. And the reason why it works is because we know that the trees themselves are putting off this scent as their own protection. They are also trying to keep viruses and bacteria away from themselves for their own protection. And so when you find a plant's protection system, their immune system is going to work for our immune system because human beings came up through the world in the forests. And the trees are our friends and our mates. So that is why we advise you to have vaporizers to help clean your air. So I'm just here filling time a little bit. Claudia is going to come on in a second, and she is going to introduce our next guest. And so that'll be Autumn. And Autumn is ready. She's in the next room. I'm going to be leaving you now. And thank you all for attending, for staying with us. Claudia is going to let you know about Autumn's talk. See you later. Bye.
Our next speaker is Autumn Whitaker, and we're really glad to have her here because she actually went through COVID, and we're really excited that she's willing to share her insights and understanding. This is the information we need more than anything else, I think. So, welcome, Autumn, and you can talk a little bit about yourself too. Okay.
Hello. Thank you, Claudia, for introducing me. Amber is almost a second name now. I've been called it so many times, but my name is Autumn Whitaker. That was wonderful to hear Claudia and get to hear her speak. It was so beautiful. She pulled me right in and took me on the journey that was much needed, and I appreciated her so much, so thank you. I am a certified herbalist. I am a rebirthing and breath therapist. I'm also a local organic farmer, and I raise goats for dairy. I grew up here, so I've spent my life in the Willits area, and I love this place so much. And my family recently got COVID, or last December, and I feel grateful we all came through okay, but it was definitely no joke. It is really a serious virus, and so it's important to hear from people who have had it and can speak firsthand to what symptoms were like, what worked out, and we can take those experiences and utilize them personally if we need to. So to start with, being an herbalist, when I had heard about COVID, when it had first kind of hit the news and people weren't really paying attention yet, or it didn't feel like a serious threat to us, something in the back of my mind said, this is real. Let's pay attention. And what I do in those situations when I feel that way is I look to ways I can prepare, because that's how I deal with fear or challenges, is that I like to feel prepared and that I've done my best. And so that if the challenge comes my way, I know that I'm as ready as I can be. So the first thing I did was to research and see who else was talking about it. And right away I was taken to Buhner's papers and writings. He is known for his work on Lyme disease, and he jumped right on figuring out COVID. You know, he's written beautiful books on herbal antiviral and herbal antibacterials, and so COVID was definitely in his realm, and he went for it. So he put together a whole 3-part protocol, which Sara Grusky is also going to talk a little bit about later, but I'm going to touch on it too, because it was a big part of our treatment plan and how I treated my family. So we got COVID last December. We don't know exactly how we got it. I was really staying home, taking care of my body, taking care of my son, trying to stay as safe as possible and as healthy as possible. My husband works in the greater world, and so it's likely he came in contact with it and brought it back to our farm. It was really intense for all of us. We came down hard. Within a day, he was incapacitated with pain, physical pain all over his body, and fever, and I knew immediately this wasn't a normal flu or cold, and encouraged him to go get tested, which he did, and it came back positive. I came down with symptoms within 12 hours after him, and my son just a few hours after me. So I, at that time, had formulated the Buhner protocol, which is a large protocol, so I had it on hand in the pantry, and we all just started to take it immediately, including my son, who was 8 at that time, and I just altered the dosage for his age and weight. We started taking that immediately, and I feel like that was such an important player. And I'm going to go through the herbs and the different formulations that he recommends. I'm not going to list the actions of all the herbs because it's too big and it's too complicated. But what I feel is if I share these herbs with people and they can write down some and they're able to locate even a few of them and have them on hand, it's really vital and important and worth your time. So let's do that. Let's jump into that. So again, Sara Grusky is going to talk about it a little bit later, or mention it at least. But the Buhner protocol is comprised of 3 separate formulations. The first one is what he calls the core formula, and I think is really made up of the big antiviral players. So I'm going to list these slowly. If people want to jot them down, please do so. Some may seem familiar, some are local, some are really what we call exotics. So the core formula consists of Scutellaria B, also known as Bakel skullcap, Japanese knotweed, kudzu root, licorice root, which is familiar to many people, and you can access it through Mariposa or local providers. The final herb in the core formula is Sambucus leaf. So Buhner recommends the leaf, which isn't used very often. We know of Sambucus, which is elderberry. We know of the berry, which is usually what we use. So he has his reasons for feeling like the leaf is the better option. It's the stronger medicine, and it's more appropriate for the way we want to encourage the immune system during this illness than the berry. So that's the core formula. His second formula, which is his immune supporting formulation, has cordyceps, angelica, rhodiola, and astragalus. I feel like all of those are accessible locally, again, through our health food store or through local herbalists. The third is his cellular protection and cytokine modulator, which I felt was such a key element. And when I was researching this protocol and putting it together, I wasn't completely aware of why we would need that yet, as we didn't know too much about the virus. However, now we know how important that element is. And looking back, I feel so grateful that he's included that information. So the herbs in that formulation are danshen, or also known as red sage, salvia, ceanothus root, and Bidens pilosa. I am growing Bidens pilosa in my garden, as I know other herbalists are now. Even though it's not native to here, it grows very easily. Some of these herbs may be harder to find. He also recommends a general protection formula for taking for preventative measures, which people can take now. Forsythia, honeysuckle, and again the Bakel skullcap. So, like I said, these herbs can be hard to find. They can be hard to source. Some of them are, expensive. And it definitely took a good amount of effort to make this formulation. If it feels overwhelming to people, I know that Sara Grusky is selling some of the formulation, and you can reach out to her. Also, like I said at first, even locating some of the herbs, a couple herbs from each formulation, seems wise and worth your time. I know several herbalist friends who have focused on just one or two and have based their own home protocols on that. So that seems really worth it. And again, have it on hand before you need it. The peace of mind that I had knowing it was there was huge and lowered my stress levels or my anxiety about if my family catches this. I knew that I had something ready to go. So doing these things now as opposed to when you think you're sick is vital. So I want to go into the other herbs that I used and my family used, and that I recommend. Two of the herbs are local. We also took a lot of supplements, most of which people know about and take already. So I'm going to start with the main herb that is not in the Buhner protocol that ended up being the life-saving game changer for me. My son and husband dealt with the COVID infection better than I did. They both were through it in 2 weeks, even though it hit them really hard and was scary at times. They were done after 2 weeks, and I was not. I continued to struggle breathing and having strange heart symptoms. I had neurological side effects that were really interesting and alarming, and so it became the focus of the household that I continue to improve and not slip backwards, or I was going to need to seek medical attention for sure. And I have asthma. That's a little bit to know, so I kind of had a feeling going into it that I might struggle a little bit more than other people, and I did. And what was surprising was I didn't have a severe cough necessarily, which a lot of people do with a bad COVID infection. I had more of a tightness in my chest. Like, it was extremely hard to breathe, to take a deep breath. And I had a blood oxygen monitor, which I used regularly. I used it sometimes through the night, and I could see that my blood oxygen levels were dropping and sometimes kind of in the dangerous area. I had called and spoke to a nurse at the ER who recommended, the level I didn't want to go below, and that if it got to that and it stayed at that, I needed to come in. So I took that seriously. I didn't want to go into the ER, even though I think my family felt I should, because I wanted to have access to these herbs and things, and I wanted to be able to treat myself as I thought I needed. And of course I would go if it got to the emergency point. So it got pretty darn close, and there was an evening where my husband was loading things in the car, and he said, "We're going to the ER. Let's do this now. It's time." And you know, being a stubborn herbalist and being an herbalist for over 15 years, I felt like, no, I've got to have something. There's something in there that I'm not looking at. There's some picture that I'm not, you know, zoning in on. And I had tried several lung supporting herbs. I was doing Mullein and then Ella Campaign and Yerba Santa, and people kept asking, "Are you trying this and this?" And I was trying it all. I started to dig into the back of my pantry and said, you know, give me one more moment, give me another chance to try to find something that will help without being irresponsible, of course. And he did, and I found in the back of my pantry a jar of California spikenard, also known as Aurelia. And I had made it the previous year for people suffering from lung afflictions due to wildfire smoke at that time, and I had passed it out to several people, but I wasn't taking it myself, and I hadn't tried taking it myself. So I grabbed that half-gallon jar, and I took 2 teaspoons, and I waited a minute, and within about 15 minutes the inflammation in my lungs had decreased so much that I was able to breathe comfortably and feel like the crisis had passed for the moment. I continued to take it every half hour for about 2 hours to really bring the inflammation down, and ended up not needing to go into the hospital. And that was huge. I don't know that this herb will work for everybody, and I don't recommend it for going, you know, medical attention if you find you need that, but it did work for me. And so a couple of things on it. It grows locally. It grows in wet, moist creek zones. It's the root that's used for this application. Traditionally, the leaf can be used as well, but it's more of a gentle lung tonic. The root is known as an excellent lung ally historically for chronic and acute lung conditions. It has extremely strong anti-inflammatory actions, which is what helped me. And it's used with great success for people struggling with emphysema and COPD. It reduces lung spasms and improves respiration, which is what I experienced firsthand, and which is really important with COVID and the way that it makes us feel in our lungs when we're struggling to breathe. It's an aromatic expectorant, so it increases the circulation to the lungs and allowing more nutrients to the lungs, as well as gently expelling hard, stagnant mucus and waste from the lungs. And it does both as far as bringing secretions into a dry cough and thinning out really stagnant mucus, so it can be used in both situations, which is really good. It's also a powerful preventative, which I now know, so I do take it regularly for those who struggle with respiratory conditions already and know that their lung tissue is more sensitive to colds, to allergies, or if you have asthma, things like that. So it's a tonic as well and can be safely taken ahead of time to prepare yourself for the chance of contracting COVID so that your lungs are in their best shape. I also took it for months following my infection with COVID, as it's known to be really restorative and to repair damaged lung tissue. I took it for months at a stronger dose, and then, as I said, I still take it now for its preventative qualities too. So that's a good one to have on hand. You can again, forage for it. If you know someone who knows where it's growing, you can check in moist zones, creek zones, if you have that on your property. Since I've spread this info, several people are trying to grow it now too. So speak to the community, see who might have it available. I'm going to move along because I'm sure time is getting short, but another couple herbs that were important for my family that we used were yarrow and boneset. Yarrow grows locally. I have it here in this jar. I don't know if you can see it well, but this is harvested from my property. It's very easy to harvest the blooms. It's a diaphoretic as well as boneset, and they both open up the pores, they induce sweating, they help with the high fever, lowering the fever. And that's important. The fever rages so high with COVID, and we want it to rage. We want a healthy immune response and fever response, but we don't want it to get into the dangerous levels, and we don't want it to deplete the system so much that the body has a hard time fighting the virus, which is a risk with high fevers. So I used both of those herbs. There's also some really interesting research that's coming out around yarrow helping with the prevention of blood clotting, which is a really scary thing that happens for some people and with COVID. So yarrow has the ability to regulate and revitalize the venous system. It removes stagnation. It promotes healthy blood flow. All of these help prevent blood clots. And that the blood clotting thing seems to be, a hot topic and really an issue for many people that they're concerned about. So that also leads me quickly onto green tea extract, which has high levels of quercetin in it, which Annie also mentioned. So I had kind of been turned on to that before I got COVID, and so I had a green tea extract on hand, which I took and everyone in my family took, and it contains the flavonoid quercetin, which is also found in red wine, ginkgo biloba, onions, apples, elderberries. Many things have it, but I think it's recommended to get a supplement of it or take something like a really strong compound like I had with the green tea. It's also really good regulating the platelets, stabilizing mast cells, all of these good things. And Mariposa is able to order the green tea extract if people are interested in that. I'm going to touch really quickly on this. When I got COVID, there was only one really good study coming out from Canada on cannabinoids and their ability to stop the proliferation of COVID in your cells. And when I researched it recently, my page exploded with so many studies that are now happening everywhere around the effect of CBD and THC on COVID. And I think that's an important one to look into. I did take CBD while I had COVID, and I had a little oil that I kept by my bed, and I took that as well. I was told I had 5 minutes left, so I'm going to move along quicker. I have so much information to share, so I'll also give my info for contact if anybody wants to speak to me directly or wants a consultation. I am seeing people now at this point who have COVID and need extra support. So I took vitamin C, zinc, and D, which Annie mentioned and most people have at home or are taking already. One that I feel is really important is vitamin A, that's not mentioned as often. So it's such a major anti-inflammatory for the body, and it also promotes a healthy immune response. So I took it in the form of fish oil, and I think that's another one that should be included for sure. Lastly, I'm going to talk about things that we did that weren't herbal, but things that felt really important to keep the lungs working well, to keep mucus flowing, and The first one was steams. We did a lot of steams, like 4 or 5 steams a day, just the pot of water with essential oils in them, towel over the head. I use thyme and eucalyptus, sometimes rosemary. There's a mix that you can definitely use, and that just kept the lungs moist and the mucus flowing. I did tapping on the back, on the lungs, and I watched online some beautiful demonstrations by nurses who were using this in the COVID wards as well. And I would lay upside down, face down, off of the edge of my bed, and my husband would tap for a good 10-15 minutes on my back, just, behind where my lungs are. And when I had a cough that was really unproductive or wouldn't move, this action, this exercise would allow me to get up and be able to spit something up and have the lungs expand more than they were able to before. So it feels like a really important thing to add. I also, while resting and laying back in bed, would tap on my chest, and I would hum while tapping on my chest and just send that energy and that vibration to my lungs. And even though it hurt, I worked really hard on taking big, big, big breaths and expanding my lungs and not letting them become stagnant or resistant. So another thing that we did was we took hot baths. We took hot baths with magnesium salts to help us sweat it out, to clean the toxins out of the body. Magnesium really pulls waste from the body, and I feel like you're shedding a lot of funky stuff when you have COVID and you're sweating. So we did a lot of hot baths. We drank so much water, so much tea. We slept, we laughed. We made sure to laugh and love on each other and keep sweetness alive and not get swallowed up by the fear that comes with an illness like this. And if that's watching funny movies or, being silly together, we did puzzles on the bed. But things to remind you that you're okay, that you've got this, and to keep you focused and calm. These things are really, really important. And yeah, it feels like this is a virus that's not going away, and we will likely be dealing with it for a while. It also feels, pretty likely that most of us will get it at some point, or those we love will get it, and will be called on to show up for them. So I hope this has been helpful. I'm so grateful for people for tuning in. I can hold up my card, but I don't think you'll see it, so we'll put it on. Yeah, you can't see it. So we'll put it on the Facebook group if people want to ask me questions or have any concerns and need extra support or want a consultation. Okay, thank you so much for tuning in. So much love to everybody. Take care.
Oh, don't leave. Hi.
Oh, I'm asked not to leave.
Autumn, we actually had a question,
Oh, okay.
and it had to do about the oxygen level.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to share a little bit about your oxygen level, and is that something you feel comfortable talking about?
Yeah, about how low it got? Yeah, so Claudia is saying that we have a question. I don't know if you could hear her well, but about the oxygen levels and how low they got. So that's a good thing because I wanted to touch on it more. You can get an oxygen monitor that slips onto your finger for your blood oxygen. It's really easy, simple to use. It's not uncomfortable. You can get them at Rite Aid. You can order them online. And so that's what we had, just a basic one like that. And there are many different opinions on how low you want those levels to go and still feel comfortable. And we were told that you don't want it to get, and I hope I'm remembering this correctly because it's been a while, but I believe it was that you didn't want it to get into the mid-70s. And I think when we started to feel nervous, mine was a little bit high 70s. And I think a good level is probably 85 and up. But yeah, you definitely get below 85, you start paying attention, and then you definitely don't want to drop below 80. And that's what I'm remembering, and I sure hope I am right on that. But yeah, I think that's an important thing to have too at home, so you can keep track. You know if things are getting to a scary place and you need to get help. Yes, good. Okay, thank you so much.
Well, there you have it. Thank you, Autumn. So there's nothing better than getting information from someone who has gone through it. So thank you very much, Autumn, for being so wonderful to explain all this stuff. As I hope you took notes. And here's another note. So thank you for putting questions in the chat. If we are not able to respond to them during this event, go to Community Immunity, the group on Facebook, and put your questions there, and we'll get to them. So no worries. All right, next speaker. All right, it's Diane Smalley, our local awesome acupuncturist, and Diane will tell you everything you want to know about her. And then she's going to talk about the importance of the lymphatic system.
Hi everyone, so great to see you. It's fantastic. All right, thank you everyone for putting this program together and making it happen. All right, again, my name's Diane Smalley, and I am a licensed acupuncturist, and I've been practicing acupuncture and herbal medicine since 1985, when I was 15. So and one of my favorite things to work with people is teaching them about teaching you how to keep yourself well. And I was very fortunate many years ago to have a teacher who taught me some really basic things that I've used all these years, and this is one of them, and it's one of my favorite subjects, is the lymphatic system. And really every part of our life, every aspect of our life has something to do with our immune system. The immune system is really a global system. But interestingly enough, when we're learning medicine, physiology in school, the textbook, it's the last chapter in the book. And it's kind of the last area that Western medicine is figuring out. Of course, there's a lot more known about it since 1985 when I was studying. But I think because it's such a global system that Western medicine is learning to see more aspects of the body, and really natural medicine has been doing that from the beginning. We see the body as a whole system and influenced by many things. So for instance, our community, the whole title of this day is our community is a big part of our immune system. People give us feedback, what they see, and they help us out by reminding us to drink our water, for instance. And our intuition, like if I get an idea that I probably shouldn't step over that large thing, I should go around it, that's our intuition saving us from possibly falling or something like that. And our instincts, our awareness. And then looking at the body, every part, the skin, our nerves, our senses, and our major organs of elimination, like the liver and the kidney and the spleen. We'll come back to that. And our muscles help us to move out of the way of harm's way. And then down into the cell membranes, the very membrane of each cell, and the enzymes that are involved in our functions, and our blood and our lymph systems and our lymph cells. We have the lymph system has several aspects, and we think of the lymph as our lymph nodes. The lymph nodes are a filter along the way, but we'll come back to that. But the lymph system has vessels, it has cells, it has fluid in it, and so there's many parts to it. And it turns out that there's twice as much lymph, and I'll define that in a moment, but there's twice as much lymph fluid in the body than there is blood. There are twice as many lymph vessels than there are blood vessels. And when that lymph is really moving properly, the immune system can do its job, because those lymph vessels that flow through the whole body are the highway of the immune system. Every signal that there's something that needs to be handled in the body, that there's an immune situation, all those signals, all those messages travel through the lymph system and go to the areas where the antibodies are stored. For instance, I call them the helper cells, and it triggers an immune response to heal the body. It's fascinating. And so let's take a look at the blood system for a moment, because the blood and the lymph are interrelated very intimately. And so the blood is made of red and white blood cells and platelets suspended in a liquid called plasma. And plasma is more of a clear, sort of a golden fluid that when they separate the blood cells, it's that fluid that rises to the top. And so the plasma has a lot of organic and inorganic substances that are dissolved in the fluid. Now, as the blood travels through the arteries are the largest vessels of the blood, and it gets down to the arterioles, and then it gets down to the very small capillaries, the capillaries. The capillaries are so small that the red blood cells have to go single file through those capillaries. And the capillaries are quite porous. They're permeable, and they're very narrow, as I said. And they're so that as we get down to that capillary level, the red blood cells are flowing through, and the plasma is sort of leaking out. It's flowing out of the capillary, and it's meant to do that because that plasma carries the nutrients to the cells. And just like we take in food and put out waste, every cell in the body takes in nutrients and puts out waste. And so all the cells are bathed in this lymph fluid. That's why there's so much more lymph fluid, because it's all the fluid. It's also known as interstitial fluid, but once the plasma is out of the blood vessel, we can call it the lymph. It's a little bit of an old-fashioned term, but it's now lymph. And lymph is what bathes all the cells through the whole body. And so the nutrients flow with the lymph to the cell, and the waste from the cell uses those nutrients and makes energy and does what it does, and then the waste that flows, the metabolic waste that flows out of the cell, needs to flow away from the cells. And so this is why the lymph needs to flow. It's a major flow of the body. And it doesn't just kind of flow steady. It has a wave pattern to it. It's a very slow wave pattern to it. And so now the blood system has a heart to pump it. Ba-boom, ba-boom. And so the blood is flowing very steady, and it also has that wave of the heart. The pump for the lymph system are the muscles. Every muscle in the body, as we move the muscles, the lymph is pumped just up to the surface under the skin, sort of the flesh area, what I call. And starting at the fingers and toes, there's tiny little vessels that collect and collect, just like a river system. Starts with a little spring here and goes into a little creek and becomes a river. And all those lymph vessels flow just under the surface of the skin. If we could highlight them, it would look just like a river system. And all the lymph pumps up the arms, up the legs. So it's going against gravity. And so that's why we need to stay moving. And it's even helpful to put our feet up sometimes, to use gravity to bring that lymph back up, because it's all flowing up, 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 deep in the belly, deep on the surface of the torso, and down from the head. And all of that lymph collects into two major veins. It all ends up into two major vessels, I should say. And then those vessels dump into a major vein that's just under the collarbone here. So this is where all the lymph ends up in the body. It collects in the body. This is Humboldt Bay right here for those of you in the Eel River Basin. And so the lymph joins with the venous blood. The venous blood is the blood that's going to the organs of elimination. It's spent its oxygen, it's got the waste in it, so it's going to the organs of elimination, which are the liver, the kidney, and the spleen. Those are the 3 organs of elimination: the liver, the kidney, and the spleen. And along the way, we find some lymph nodes. And those are little filters that kind of are helping to clean that lymph up a little bit as it flows, keep it flowing. And so the main areas where those lymph nodes are the armpit, the groin, the neck, many lymph nodes around the neck, and the spleen. Spleen's kind of like a large lymph node. And the main area where there's most lymph nodes are in the colon area, the large intestine. And why are they in those areas? Because those are areas that there's more sweat there, and the large intestine, for instance, has all the bacteria. And so they're helping to capture that bacteria so it's not traveling through the whole body just willy-nilly. And so the lymph nodes are amazingly effective. In fact, our body's just an amazing self-healing organism. So that's a little bit about how the lymph system is set up. And I'll say right now that I have a handout that I will post on the Facebook and so forth, so you'll have access to that. And I'll also give you my email at the end where you can find that. So let's look at some things that are hard on the lymph system, some things that we might want to watch out for that would be congesting to the lymph system. Number 1, sugar. Sorry to say, I have a sweet tooth too, just like everybody. But it's and a little bit of dessert once in a while is not a problem, but it's when that daily sodas and ice cream and things like that come in. Also, coffee is somewhat congesting. I'll come back to that. Smoking, of course, alcohol, marijuana is congesting to the lymph system. Fast foods, processed foods, anything that's hard to digest. Food that's irradiated. Tap water, especially the chlorine in the tap water, is hard on the lymph system. And drugs that are the kind of drugs that are steroid drugs, like cortisone and prednisone, because they get they take the place of the adrenals, and we really need our adrenals to work. And in fact, stress itself is hard on the lymph system, so we want to be careful to do some stress-reducing activities like what Claudia shared with you. And in fact, my teacher said stress is to the lymph system as frying is to bacon, and so stress just kind of contracts that whole lymph system. So we really want to, and I'll come back to that in a moment too. So there are some ways that you can tell that your lymph system is congested. One is like a sore throat, too much mucus, sinus being plugged up, digestive problems, irregular stools, constipation. These are all signs of a congested lymph system. Also allergies, headaches, muscle pain, fatigue, depression, apathy, dark circles under the eyes, and those enlarged lymph nodes. These are signs of a plugged up, a congested lymph system. Also, when there's all kinds of tender spots all over, that's another sign. Especially when those are on the outer thigh, under the ribs, the breastbone, and the collarbone. In fact, inflammation in general, like I said, the lymph system, those lymph vessels are the highway of the lymph system. So anytime there's an inflammation going on, that lymph system is busy passing the signals and the cells to heal that inflammation. It's kind of loaded. So that's why we really want to deal with inflammation in the right way. So how can we help our lymph system to be less congested? And one is to breathe with our diaphragm. And that's my favorite subject, as those of you who know me. I always am talking about exhaling on effort. So just take a moment right now as you're standing or sitting, and put your hand on your belly and breathe into your belly through your nose if you can, and then nice long exhale. Breathing into the belly. You don't need to emphasize the inhale. The exhale is what you want to focus on. When we breathe, that's how we breathe when we're at rest. So when we breathe that way on purpose, it calms the system down and helps to move the lymph. Guess what? There's a lymph vessel, big lymph vessel that, here's the diaphragm muscle. It's all attached around through here. There's a large vessel that goes up through the diaphragm. So every time we breathe, it's milking that lymph to help it keep moving up towards the collarbone area. Also, staying hydrated is super important for the lymph system. So a good concept is a couple quarts a day. For most people, that's about the right amount. If you're very active, it's fine to drink more, but a couple quarts is really good amount. You can use a humidifier at night. So moving your body, all the sitting we've been doing through this pandemic has been hard on us, hard on the lymph system. And so doing some kind of activity, going out for a walk is fantastic. Yoga is excellent. There's so many great programs and on YouTube. And that mini tramp, bouncing on the mini tramp, is great for the lymph system. And like I said before, putting your feet up about 18 inches or a little more, or even with the legs up against the wall, is perfectly fine. Just for a few minutes even. It really helps the lymph system. And so using a dry brush on the skin, just before you get in the shower, just kind of take that dry brush, go up the limbs, up the arm. You don't have to scrub it. Just up the arm, up the legs, kind of up the torso, kind of bringing the lymph towards this collarbone area where it needs to go. And another one that's one of my favorite things is I brought my TheraBand here to demonstrate this. And what we do with a real straight wrist and straight arms is bring that over the top of the head. And I like the band because it's stretchy. See, it's kind of stretchy. And as I go along, I can make it I can bring my hands a little closer. But I like it because it gives a little as I bring my hands over the top of my head. And what this does is it stretches the pectoral muscle area, this whole chest area. And we want to keep this nice and open so we're not scrunching down on that clavicle, that collarbone area. We want to keep this nice and open so the lymph has free flow to get into that area. And you can also use a string or a towel to do that. I like this stretchy thing. It works really well. One of my favorite things, if I was queen, which I'm clearly not, I would say everyone can have a massage every week. That would be ideal. So please find the massage therapist in your area and go, because it's fantastic. It really moves the lymph, and there's actually lymphatic massage that we can do too. So a few other things, lecithin, and we're making lecithin from sunflowers now. Fantastic. It thins the lymphatics. So lecithin, Lecithin. And it's something our liver makes too. So getting the bile flowing is super important. And so other factors that are really good, getting out in the sun, getting that vitamin D, playing, doing service, helping your friends, our spiritual growth, and facing our challenges, improving our self-esteem, and making sure our digestion is working well, and eating live foods that are cooked by you. The simplest way to cook our fresh foods is in a steamer. It's really good, very easy. So I want to take a few more moments at the end here to go through some herbs that are really, really good for the immune system. And the first one is burdock. Actually, I have to say that foods are medicine. And herbs and foods are our medicine. Imagine a country where we're growing all our medicine as herbs and food. That would solve a lot of problems, wouldn't it? So any food that helps the liver, kidney, and spleen, like I said, those are the organs of elimination, and all these foods are really good for all of those, so that they improve that filtering of those organs of elimination. All are green foods. Spinach, broccoli, asparagus, cabbage, fantastic for the immune system and for the lymph system. All those green foods. And lightly steamed, they're delicious. So again, burdock. And our local health food store, Mariposa Market, yay, always has burdock year round. It's kind of a long, skinny root. Sometimes it's dark brown, sometimes it's a lighter color. It's white inside. And I'll grate it into a salad. Anytime you're making a soup, put some burdock in there. It's fantastic. It's one of the main lymph cleansers. And it's also cleansing for the blood. And also our little wonderful flower, calendula. Fantastic for the lymph system. Have I said fantastic enough yet? And dandelion, again, powerful lymph cleanser and good for so many other things. Echinacea. Now, echinacea can be used in small amounts year-round to help keep the immune system strong, but that's one of those herbs. What's the most common formula that you always hear of for the first sign of a cold? Echinacea and golden seal. They're the classic formula. In fact, that's a really important point I want to make. The time to take herbs to address a sniffle, a sore throat, right away. You want to jump right on that and have that echinacea or other herbs handy. One of my favorite ones that you can get at the health food store is Herb Farm's Herbal Throat Spray. It's fantastic to have around. Anytime you have a little bit of a sore throat, just takes care of it. And milk thistle, also wonderful, violet and yucca. Some of you probably use that quite a bit. And so these are safe herbs that can be used fairly regularly for keeping the immune system strong. This next list of herbs are herbs that we use in smaller doses. They're not herbs that we use every day. We only use them for a short period of time till they've done what we want them to do, and then we stop and we use other herbs and foods to keep us well. But these are also excellent. Cleavers, springtime. That's when, the springtime, that's when the cleavers are coming up like crazy. Gather some of those and put them in your juice. Or you can juice them and freeze it possibly. It's one of those herbs that's best to use fresh. But what a great time to have a lymph cleanser is when we're coming back into the summertime. And then there's a whole family of herbs that have that berberine, B-E-R, berberine. It's an alkaloid that's really amazing for getting the lymph cleaned out and killing any of the microbes that we don't want. And I mentioned golden seal. That's the premier herb that has the berberine, but it's an endangered herb, and so we usually use, right around here we have Oregon grape growing, and it's the root that we use. And if you pull up the root, you notice how yellow it is, and that's a sign that the berberine is there. And also barberry, very good plants for that antimicrobial. And then also 3 more, red clover, great blood cleanser. It also thins the blood, so you have to be careful with that. Red root grows all around here. It's a ceanothus. And I heard Autumn mention that one. That's also a fantastic herb for the lymph, especially when it's very congested, the lymph nodes. It helps with those swollen lymph nodes. And sarsaparilla, good old sarsaparilla, is an excellent one. So that is basically most of what I wanted to cover. Maybe we'll see if there's any questions or anything. In fact, I can see the chat here. Oops, covered up the speaker with my TheraBand. Let me see. I'm not seeing any questions there right now. But here's my email. In case you want to email me, I'd be happy to send you a copy of the handout that I have. And also I have the Stephen Buhner handouts that I could send. Let me see if there's anything else that I wanted to cover real quick.
Why don't you tell them where you practice?
Okay. Claudia's suggesting that I tell you where my practice is, and gosh, I hope I didn't completely mess up by covering up the microphone. I practice here in Willits, California, at 750 Central. We call it Healing Central. And I practice also with Kate Black, who's another practitioner, and we also have a massage therapist there, Clancy Rash, and the chiropractors, Healing Central Chiropractic with Shauna Hanshug and Izzy Perry, very, very wonderful practitioners. And so if you live in Willits, it's across the street from the furniture store on Central Street. Central Street comes into the north end of Safeway there. So it's been wonderful to be here with you, and please, a question.
Actually, we were very excited to see that you were showing the TheraBand.
Yes.
Because actually, I am recommending that too. So why don't you talk a little bit more about this?
Okay, good. All right. This is something I'm sure you can get it online. They probably have it at Big Five. It's just a piece of stretchy rubber, and you can strengthen your muscles, and it's a great exercise for your muscles. You can come up and down. You can there's a whole system of working with this. Let's see. And so just to review what I was showing is to come up, keep the wrist really straight, and come up and over, and like I said, this is a really good stretch for the pectorals. But for instance, if we wanted to exercise the pectorals, we can use the TheraBand, and it's a very simple and gentle way it's a gentle way to work out the muscles. And so, for instance, if I want to work the tricep muscle on the back of my arm, I would take the TheraBand and do a row like that, straighten out the arm. If I want to work the bicep, I would go the opposite way and come this way. And what I like, another thing that's really good about it is you can fine-tune exactly how much strength you're using by how much length of it. And there are also different grades. There are different thicknesses of the TheraBand I've seen. And so if you're just starting out, you can get the thinnest one and work your way up to that.
Okay, we have 2 minutes left, and
Okay.
a question came in.
Okay.
The last herbs you mentioned, would they be of use when somebody is experiencing viral symptoms?
Yes, absolutely, especially the Oregon grapefruit. Let's see, I also have Stephen Buhner's list here, and let's see. Also, I want to say that I have access to every herb and supplement known to humankind. And there are ways now that the companies that I order from are making those available to you as well. And all the Chinese herbs that Stephen Buhner recommends, the Scutellaria, Hutuinia, Isatis, these are all, and Forsythia, Sophora, Lycoris, these are all Chinese herbs. And there's a wonderful company in the Bay Area called Spring Wind Herbs, and they have very high qualities of all these. In the Puraria, the Chinese skullcap, the kudzu, all that. So definitely don't hesitate to get in touch with me if there's anything like that you could use. And so it's been a real joy. Here's my email again in case you want it. It's been a real joy to be here with you, and I wish you well. All right. Thank you.
Well, hello again. Thank you, Diane. Always a wealth of information. So, if you feel like this is worth your time being with us here today, let us know. And we appreciate the questions. And again, if we are not able to answer the question here, we will get to them in the Facebook group, Community Immunity. Please check it out and post your questions there. So, on we go. Up next, Sara Grusky. Sara Grusky is an amazing farmer, and she will tell you probably about your farm too a little bit. She's going to tell us all her experience with the wonderful herbs that are used in Stephen Buhner's formula, and she has some fresh herbs to share with us. So I guess, Sarah, when you're ready, just come on in and I will vacate this seat. Okay.
Hello, everybody. It's great to be here today and to share all this information. Of course, it would be even better if we could be with each other in person, but it is so important to be taking all the precautions that are necessary. I'm being told to speak louder, so I will speak louder. Welcome to all of you, and what I'm going to talk about today is a mix of different herbs that are useful for active COVID infection, as well as herbs that are useful for preventative and building our immune system so that we are less likely to get COVID or any other viral infection or bacterial infection. So I'm just going to jump right in since it's a lot of information to go over, and I hope that you will ask any questions that come up as I go along. So I'm going to start by talking about some herbs that are actually not herbs that we commonly grow here in Mendocino County, but are part of the amazing tradition of traditional Chinese medicine. And these herbs have been most widely and effectively used for active COVID infections. And I want to begin by giving a greeting and a homage to Stephen Buhner, who's written some amazing books, and we're going to be using his information to talk about his formula for active COVID infections. He's written a couple of books, one called Herbal Antivirals. He's written more than a couple of books. One called Herbal Antibiotics, and a number of other books. And his information about his COVID formula, which is really a work in progress, can be found on the internet if you just Google his name and COVID formula. His name is spelled the Old English way, Stephen, S-T-E-P-H-E-N, Buhner, B-U-H-N-E-R. So all of the information that I'm going to give you today can be found on his voluminous research papers that you can download on the internet. And I think before we talk about his amazing research on COVID-19 herbal formulas, I want to take a moment, because he's actually very ill, and I want to take a moment to send him healing thoughts and lots of love. And his research has been so very, very important to all of us in the herbal community and users of herbal medicine. It's very unique the way he does his research, because he's the son of an ex-Surgeon General of the United States, and his brother's a physician, perhaps other members of the family as well. So he has access to research institutions, research in medical laboratories, things that not all of us have access to. And he's dedicated himself to doing research that has really helped the herbal community to develop more powerful herbal remedies, especially as we enter into a time of these pandemics. So I'm going to share with you his formula, and this is a formula that I made with his instructions and his knowledge. And here's a jar of his formula right here, and it's available for anybody who would like it. And I'm also going to give a little bit of information about how you could make it but it is a fairly complex formula. But I'm happy to share this. I intend to make more, and it is for active COVID infections. We don't want to waste it. There's other things to use to build our immune systems to prevent and to support us so that we won't get COVID. This is for when you do have an active COVID infection. All right. So Stephen Buhner did lots and lots of research looking at what we have in our herbal medicine chest that's most effective in fighting the COVID and other SARS viruses, and what herbs are effective in addressing the symptoms that are caused by the movement of the COVID virus in our bodies, the way it attacks our immune system and other organs, bloods, our circulatory system, our blood system. So he's addressed a variety of aspects of COVID, and it's a work in progress as we learn more about how this virus works. So there are a total of 6 Chinese herbs that he says are the absolute most important ones to include in your COVID formula. The first 4 are essential, and the second 2 are useful, but second to the first 4. So we're going to go over the first 4, and I'm going to tell you their names both in the common language and their Latin names, because sometimes in different cultures and communities and countries we use different common names for the herbs. So I'm going to tell you both, and the Latin name is the way to ensure that you're getting the herb that you are looking for. So the top of his list is Chinese skullcap is the common name, and the Latin name is Scutellaria bacalensis. And this amazing herb, it's the root of the plant. This amazing herb is specifically antiviral for the SARS-CoV group of viruses. It gives a lot of protection to the lymphatic system, and he gets very technical, but I'm going to just throw out a little bit of technical language because then we can understand how amazing the actions of these herbs are, because the way that the COVID virus works is that primarily it comes in through our nasal passages, and then it attaches through receptors to certain kinds of epithelial and endothelial cells. And I don't want to get too technical, but it's through being able to block the attachment that we can inhibit the danger of the way COVID affects us. So a lot of these herbs, what they do is they block the ability of the virus to attach to these cells and move through our body, or attach to the receptors in these cells. They're called ACE2 receptors, just to get technical. But blocking the ability of the virus to get into our cells is really essential. So all of these herbs do that. And the second one is red sage root, or Salvia miltorisa is the Latin name. And it supports the cell system. It helps protect against blood clotting, and it inhibits what's called the cytokine storm, which is the dysregulation of our immune systems that COVID causes. And it also strengthens the resistance that the ACE2 receptors have to stopping the virus from entering. The third one is called Isatis, and that is both the Latin and the common name, Isatis. It's specifically antiviral for the COVID SARS group of viruses, and it inhibits this cytokine cascade in our immune system that dysregulates it so much and enables the virus to do damage. The fourth really essential herb in the Buhner COVID formula is kudzu, which is an invasive plant all over the East Coast, especially the southern part of the U.S., an amazing vine. Its Latin name is Puraria lobata. It's really important in protecting the lungs, and it also strengthens the resistance of the cells to the virus trying to enter. So kudzu is the fourth. Those are the four most important herbs, he says, for an active case of COVID. The next two are the second line most essential. So if you can get these, throw them in. They're also great. It's a Chinese herb called hutania, and that's the Latin as well as the common name. And the second one is Japanese knotwood, and its Latin name is Polygonum cuspidatum. So if you're not getting all these technical Latin names, please, and you're interested in making this formula or finding out more about it, please Google Stephen Buhner and his COVID-19 formula, and you'll find it all there on the internet. If you do, Diane Smalley, who was just speaking to you prior to me, can help you access any of these herbs. They are mostly roots, and so if you're making this formula, you do want to ideally use a method called a double extraction, because roots have so many good things, and to get all of those really medicinal constituents out so we can use them, double extraction is the best method, and that means you start by basically very gently boiling the roots in a very slow boil for 12 to 24 hours. And then you press out the root matter and you add the tincture. So you're getting the medicinal constituents that are necessary from water, and the medicinal constituents that come out better with alcohol. You're getting both of them. All right, so that's the Stephen Buhner formula for active COVID cases, and it is something that has been very effective, and best to start as soon as you know that you have COVID, and you can get it. There's a variety of herbalists in our community here in Willits who are making this formula. I am one of them, and my contact information will be available at the end. And I want to also say that I believe that that healthcare is a human right, and for all of us, and so there's never any reason to not have access to medicine if you need it, regardless of the cost. So I make this available to anyone who needs it, regardless of what you can pay or not pay. Okay, so we're going to move on now to a couple of herbs that are things we can grow right here in Mendocino County, and the first one I brought a sample of. It is called Biden's pilosa. That's its Latin name, Biden's pilosa. And this is what it looks like. I'm going to remove the elderberry. You don't want to get it confused. All right, this is what Biden's Pelosa looks like. It's a weed. People say it grows so easily and grows in so many different climates. It looks a little bit like parsley. And the most important part of it is the leaf matter. It tastes really delicious. People use it as what's called a pot herb too, you know, just something you might throw into a stew or a soup. So yummy. It tastes a little bit like parsley. Now, ideally you want to harvest your Biden's Pelosa before it goes to flower. You see there's a little flower on there. I didn't quite get to this piece, this bushy piece in time, the one that has the flower on it. Once the herbs start to flower, there's a little bit less energy and medicine in the leaf matter. But most of it is the leaf matter. And what I do to make the Biden's Pelosa medicine is so very, very simple. So first you cut right before it starts to flower, which is right about now in my garden. You cut your Biden's Pelosa, the stems and the leaves, and then I just throw it all into a food processor or a blender with 95%, I use organic cane alcohol. So this is pretty potent, right? It's not something that you're going to drink, right? It's medicine. You're just going to take a little bit, but you throw it in with 95% organic cane alcohol and just grind it all up. And once you do that, it looks like this. Here it is, my Biden's Pelosa smoothie. And I did this, let's see what the date, I did this on August 16th. And I am letting it sit for about 3 to 4 weeks, for all of the medicinal constituents to seep into the alcohol. And then what I'll do is I'll press out the remaining leaf and stemmy matter, and I'll have my tincture all ready. So that's Biden's Pelosa. Now, why am I telling you about Biden's Pelosa? What's important about Biden's Pelosa? Well, I want to start by saying that Biden's Pelosa is so amazing, and it's another plant that was brought to our attention by Stephen Buhner, but in our community here in Willits, it was really brought to our attention by Bill Bruneau, who some of you may know, used to run a seed company, an amazing seed company called Bountiful Gardens. And Bill sort of brought this knowledge about Biden's Pelosa to many, many people in our community, brought us seeds and encouraged us to grow it. So we really need to credit him with his enthusiasm for this particular plant, which has spread to many of us as we've used it for so many things. Now, what's special about Biden's Pelosa in the context of COVID is that it's really amazing. It's really amazing in preventing the entry of the COVID virus through our nasal passages. It helps the cells in our nasal passages to stop the entry of this virus. So a great one to have around. It is something that if you feel a little bit run down, it's fine to take it. It's a very gentle herb. It's It's an amazing mucous membrane tonic, which is why it's so good to protect those mucous membranes in our nose and make them less susceptible to COVID being able to get in. So that's Biden's Pelosa. Don't forget about Biden's Pelosa. It is amazing, and you can get some seeds from me or other people in our herbal community and grow it in your garden. And the tincture is also available through many of the herbalists in our community, myself included. Okay, moving along, we're going to talk about another very readily available herb in our community. You probably recognize this one. It's a little droopy. So here is a beautiful branch of elderberry, and it grows under some oak trees on my farm, and it's a plant that likes water. It's often found along creeks and streams and bodies of water. And the amazing thing about elderberry, one of the many amazing things, is that every part of it is medicinal. The leaves, the flowers, here's a little bit of flower left here, and the berries, all of it has medicinal constituents. Now, from Stephen Buhner's point of view, even though we often hear about the berry as being the main medicine, or maybe the flower, he says if you're in the context of COVID and SARS viruses, it's actually the leaf matter that's the most antiviral. So we're going to talk about the leaf matter. And the leaf is so powerful because it also can help block the cells, support the cells in blocking the entry of the COVID virus. And so he says that the leaf matter is the most important, and I want to show you how I preserve the leaf matter. I don't know if you can see this, but what I have in here is powdered elderberry leaves, and you can use these powdered elderberry leaves to make a decoction, a tea, or a tincture, and let me take a minute to differentiate a decoction. When you're making a tea, if you let it boil for a while, which we talked about with roots, that part of the plant, to get the medicine out, oftentimes you need to boil it. If you boil it, it's a decoction. For really delicate herbs, oftentimes if we boil them, we lose the medicine. So then we want to do an infusion. So you're just bringing the water up to right before boiling, and then letting it steep in there. Just let the leaf or herbal matter steep, and you get the medicine out that way. But for the leaf, he suggests a decoction, and he suggests to powder it to get the medicine out. So you can make a decoction after you powder your leaf. You can boil it, make it into a decoction. You can drink the tea right then, or if you want to preserve it, you can add about 30% alcohol to keep it for a while. So that's elder leaf, and it's a really, really wonderful support to your body's immune system. It's going to help support your body to not have that kind of immune system disruption that's called the cytokine storm that often happens with COVID. If your immune system is strong, it will help. The elderberry leaf will help to withstand your body, prevent your body from having that kind of immune system disruption if you were to get COVID. Okay, so we're going to go through one more really great, very accessible way to support our bodies through these pandemic times. And this one is using a diffuser. And I'm going to start by, before I got a diffuser last winter, we had, I was taking care of my half-brother. We had lots of people in and out of our house. And what I would do is I would put on the stove some plants. I was using eucalyptus at the time, or sometimes I was using peppermint or other mints. And I would just keep it on a low boil on my stove and just let it diffuse into the air. We have a very small house, so the house would just smell really lovely with eucalyptus and mint. And what that does is it supports your nasal passages again to protect them from the entry of any viruses, and helps to open up your lungs so you can get more oxygen and breathe deeply. So you don't need a diffuser. It's nice to have a diffuser because then you could just keep it going and going. And so I'm going to show you. I finally did get one, and I'm going to set it up for you because this is such a simple thing. And there's a variety of things you can put in it that are available here locally. My neighbor down the road does have some eucalyptus trees, that very special kind with the round leaves. So she shares them with me. So I have eucalyptus leaves, and many of you might have eucalyptus trees around you. Most eucalyptus has a long, thin leaf, but there's a variety that has these round leaves too. So you take the leaves and you cut them up and you put them in water and you boil them. You make a decoction, and you can put that decoction in your diffuser. So this is my eucalyptus tea, my eucalyptus decoction. I'm going to put it in the diffuser, and I added to my eucalyptus decoction some essential oils that you can buy at our local health food store. I have pine here. I have some peppermint, so you can put these in too. So it's pretty simple. I'm just going to open this up, and I prepared my decoction of eucalyptus tea and essential oils, and I'm just going to pour it in, plug it into the outlet, and it's going to that was a little too much. And it's going to start to diffuse a lovely steam that will smell delicious and support our nasal passages. I have 2 minutes left, and so I'm going to begin to wrap up here as I put this diffuser on. Thank you all for joining us today, and for all the organizers of the Immunity Community Forum. So stay in touch, stay healthy, and we'll see our herbal community in Mendocino County grow and develop with your support. Thank you all.
We have questions for Sara.
Aha.
Go away, Sara.
I won't.
First of all, would you like to repeat how people can find you?
Yes, I co-own a small farm called Green Uprising Farm with my husband Michael Foley, and many of you may have driven by our farm stand on East Hill Road, so please don't hesitate to stop by. We have an herbal apothecary on the farm. You can reach me at my email address, which is homesteadingsara @gmail.com. That's all one word. I'm sorry it's so long. Homesteading Sara, SARA, @gmail.com. And I'm also happy to get your texts or call me up if you have questions. My phone number is area code 707-216-5549. So yeah, come by the farm stand, and we're also at the Willits Farmers Market every Thursday, and we're happy to answer questions and to provide healthy food for our community and wonderful herbal medicine. Thank you.
One more question very
Yes.
quickly. Have you had experience with using Chinese skullcap, knotweed, and licorice as preventative?
No, I haven't. I've been saving my limited supply for people with active cases. So that's the way I've used it. But I'd be really interested in other experiences people have with using it in other ways. All right, we're going to turn on the diffuser. And say a wonderful goodbye to all of you. I wish you could smell it. All right, bye-bye.
Thank you, Sarah. That was amazing. So we don't want to be late for our next beautiful speaker. It's Anna Hope. She's going to talk about ancestral herbs and anti-racism. Anna Hope, where are you? Can you?
I'm here.
Oh,
Can you
okay.
hear me?
Yes, yes. Okay, so I want to just tell the audience, because of the distance and the air quality today, although it is really better now, we suggested to Anna Hope she would rather do this presentation from home because we didn't want her to have to drive several hours through the smoke, and it's just the driving. So we're happy to have you, Anna Hope. Go for it.
I'm going to be talking today about ancestral herbs and anti-racism. And one might wonder, what do these two big things have in common? Often when we try to talk about racism, people get easily triggered because there's so much intergenerational trauma around it for people of all races. And that's where the ancestral herbs can come in, where before having the necessary conversation about the health impacts of racism, we can ground into our own social locations, our unique intersection of privileges and lack of privileges, and then go back further to the time before these social constructs were created and link with the herbs that our tribal ancestors might have used. And when we feel grounded and supported in this way, the conversation can take on a different tone and can be more productive without a lot of unnecessary emotional triggers. So to further understand what I mean by grounding into our social location, I'm going to start by explaining the concept of intersectionality. Then we'll talk more about ancestral herbs and get into some of the health inequities generated by structural racism and what folks can do about it, because I like to be solution oriented. And the main purpose of this talk is to reduce harm for impacted populations. And that's one of the best ways we can ensure that the immunity of our whole community is strengthened. So, social location is the point where an individual's privileges and lack of privileges coincide. This is unique to the life experience of each person. Regardless of the person you are on the inside, you can be judged at first glance by others around you. And these prejudgments can act to either enhance or hinder your lived experience, give you privileges, or create oppressions. So when approaching anti-racism work, it's important to be aware of your position within a spectrum of multiple privileges and oppressions. And this awareness can create a grounding point from which you can approach these topics most effectively. So intersectionality exists when two or more oppressions exist. and are often compounded because of this. For example, Black women in the 1960s and 70s experienced both sexism within the civil rights movement and racism within the feminist movement, which led Kimberly Crenshaw to coin the term and explain the concept of intersectionality in her 1998 article, Demarginalizing the Intersection of Race and Sex. Intersectionality is now more broadly applied to social justice situations where multiple oppressions are experienced simultaneously, such as Native American women who may face higher rates of domestic violence while also struggling for Indigenous sovereignty and land rights. Intersectionality recognizes that identity markers such as race, sex, gender, age, class, ability, nationality, education, etc., don't exist independently of each other, and that each informs the others, often creating a complex convergence of oppression. And understanding intersectionality is essential to combating the interwoven prejudices people may face in their daily lives. And it's important to have these more nuanced and dynamic conversations about the differences in experience among people with different overlapping identities, because without an intersectional lens, events and movements that aim to address injustice towards one group may end up perpetuating systems of inequities towards other groups. And then alternately, when two or more privileges coincide, there can be a compounding of privileges that allows individuals to advance in life, possibly more than they realize. So I like to do a group exercise that I learned from Taylor Shanae, where we go around and name our social location out loud. And we aren't able to do this exercise today with the current Zoom format, but if you attend some of my future workshops, you'll likely experience it. This practice of naming your social location out loud for others to witness can end up being a pretty vulnerable but necessary experience. It can help us to accept where we are at without judgment or guilt, and from there, try to navigate what are the appropriate actions to take to bring about social changes. When I was young, I was told the myth of America being a melting pot, where all cultures kind of meld together to be one American culture. But the problem with this model is that in order to participate in the melt into American culture, one must give up the culture of their ancestry. So even though American culture is largely based on European culture, there are a great deal of Americans with European ancestry who have no link to more ancient ancestral traditions, especially as American culture tends more and more towards a generalized consumer culture. Americans with other ancestries have also given up or been stripped of their culture, their ancestral cultures. So many of us are in need of forging a deeper connection with our lineages. And when we're grounded in these deeper traditions that predate colonial expansion, we can gain perspective and strengthen our capacities to have the necessary conversations and to make the much needed social structure changes in this country, in this county, for the benefit of all. Resmaa Menakem, a somatic abolitionist and author of the book My Grandmother's Hands, talks about the trauma that European peoples inflicted on each other throughout the Middle Ages, to the point that this kind of trauma became normalized and passed on through the generations. So that when Europeans came to the Americas, they brought this legacy of experienced trauma and inflicted it on Indigenous people living here and peoples taken from the African continent. Resmaa Menakem believes that to get at the root of racism in this country, Americans with European ancestry will have to take a deep look at healing these intergenerational traumas in a somatic way. And when I teach about Celtic ancestry, done at a few different gatherings, I go into the ways that Celtic culture functioned as a loose network of bioregional villages with overlapping customs, traditions, beliefs, and language. But all of this changed with the Roman Empire expansion into Northern Europe, bringing colonization, genocide, slavery, and extraction of resources. So what Northern Europeans later inflicted on the rest of the world was actually a learned behavior that was inflicted on them, just as those who have been abused are more likely to become abusers. So healing this kind of intergenerational trauma is crucial to unraveling our current situation with a lens on healing where harm has been received and accountability where harm has been caused. Plants have been with us for millennia. Certain human cultures have co-evolved with certain plants that sustain them. So plants are a great way to link back with an earlier, less complicated time in human history. An example of a plant that I like to connect with from my Scottish ancestry is oats. Oats are nutritive, they can sustain me. Also, the stalk of the oat plant is nervine. The oat straw can be made into a tea that is calming and supports my nervous system. So when I eat oats or I drink this tea, I can connect with my ancient ancestors and some of the earliest oat cultivators who lived in a simpler, more tribal and egalitarian way. And I would encourage everyone else to look into what plants are relevant to their personal lineages. I plan on doing a longer, more in-depth class on this in the future, where we can all get a chance to share ancestral plants that are important to us. But this experience of knowing and connecting with my own ancestry makes it less likely that I would appropriate others' traditions and more likely that I would be able to appreciate others' connections to their own ancestry as something unique and different from my own experience, but equally as valid. From this perspective, we can start to talk about the different experiences that people have in this country, appreciating that I have my experience, but that others may be experiencing something entirely different from me, and strengthening that capacity to be listening for what those differences are. And knowing this, we can remain open to understanding the depth and breadth of other human experiences. And when working to create positive change, we can do so as a participant in mutual aid. Everyone learns and grows from the experience, rather than perpetuating a hierarchical system where one group is always the helpers and another group always in need of help. So recently, the Center for Disease Control put out a statement that structural racism is a serious threat to public health. I have a quote from that announcement I'll read. It says, "A growing body of research shows that centuries of racism in this country has had a profound and negative impact on communities of color. The impact is pervasive and deeply embedded in our society, affecting where one lives, learns, works, worships, and plays, and creating inequities in access to a range of social and economic benefits such as housing, education, wealth, and employment. These conditions, often referred to as social determinants of health, are key drivers of health inequities within communities of color, placing those within these populations at greater risk of poor health outcomes. The data shows that racial and ethnic minority groups throughout the United States experience higher rates of illness and death across a wide range of health conditions, including diabetes, hypertension, obesity, asthma, and heart disease when compared to their white counterparts. The COVID-19 pandemic and its disproportionate impact among racial and ethnic minority populations is another stark example of these enduring health disparities, right, end quote. So to put that in perspective and to get an example from our own county on the disproportionate impacts of COVID-19 on racial and ethnic communities, This time last year, about 60% of COVID cases were in the Latino community, even though Latinos make up about 25% of the population. So we can see from those numbers, the Latino community was disproportionately impacted, including many essential workers. So the Mendocino Latinx Alliance formed. It is a coalition of 8 Latinx organizations in the county who came together to try and understand and address some of the reasons why this is happening, as well as other social determinants of health, such as smaller, more crowded housing situations, and being in essential jobs where community members were more likely to be exposed. The Mendocino Latinx Alliance brought their concerns to the Board of Supervisors, who authorized the forming of a diversity, equity, and inclusion task force to help address some of these issues. The most simple change that was immediately put into place was the dissemination of COVID-19 updates and information in both Spanish and English to make the information more accessible to those whose first language is Spanish rather than English. And this can go a long way, but it doesn't really address some of the other underlying social determinants of health that are creating health disparities for communities of color. So there's still much work to be done. So now I'm going to go into some potential solutions, starting with herbs that can help with some of the conditions that communities of color experience disproportionately, and then some actions that people who have privilege or multiple privileges can do to leverage these privileges for social change and the benefit of all. So that CDC report listed diabetes, hypertension, obesity, asthma, and heart disease as some of the main concerns that are disproportionately experienced by people of color. So for diabetes, ginseng, fenugreek, cinnamon, aloe, okra, and bitter melon have all been scientifically verified to lower blood glucose levels. Hypertension, also known as high blood pressure, garlic, celery, green tea, coriander, saffron, hibiscus, and ginger have all been scientifically verified to help. Obesity, there are plenty of herbs out there that people will claim help you to lose weight, and some of them can help. But when we talk about obesity in conjunction with poverty, it's more relevant to look at the types of foods that are cheaply and readily available, and how these foods are often low in nutritional value, but high in fats, sugars, and calories. So a person may continue eating with their body signaling that it needs essential nutrients when the foods they are giving it only contribute to weight gain, never actually getting the needed nutrients. So as a solution, I would look to nutritive herbs that are high in the needed minerals, such as nettle, raspberry leaf, oat straw, red clover, and alfalfa. So taking these nutritive herbs, one might find that they're weight loss. Maidenhair fern, boswellia, saffron, licorice, hyssop, and rue are scientifically verified to be effective. And for heart disease, green tea, pomegranate, hawthorn, and garlic have been scientifically verified to help. And then herbs for COVID have already been being covered in other workshops today, so I won't repeat that information, but it's out there. So growing some of these herbs and making them available to people who need them is a great way to help. Also teaching people how to grow and use their are culturalists are interacting with, and what inherent wisdom they may already hold around that. Some other ways people can offer mutual aid are by leveraging the privileges they have to benefit others and benefit the whole. So I have a list here that's basically, if you have this privilege, you can contribute in this way. So if you have the privilege of money, you can donate to people of color, especially those doing important projects that are in alignment with your values, such as herbalism, farming, etc. Donate to campaigns that seek to change racist laws, policy, and infrastructure. Sponsor a scholarship for a person of color to access educational courses. Give to individual people of color who have offered you some insight or who may be going through a particularly hard time. So if you have the privilege of time and skills, you can contribute by volunteering with groups working for social change, educate yourself and others, create culture around anti-racism, volunteer your skills where they're needed in ways that can help, from active listening to cooking, carpentry, typing, self-defense. There's really so many ways to help with good causes. If you have certain resources, the privilege of resources, you can contribute. So you have the resource of space. You could allow groups to meet at your space. If you had tools, you could lend tools for projects. If you have a vehicle, you could lend your vehicle, offer a ride, or haul materials for a project, person of color, so that they can get their message out. You can lend your platform to a person of color so that they can get their message out to your audience and widen their reach. If you have the privilege of access, you can contribute by creating avenues to access. You can give a ride to an appointment for someone without a car. You can babysit so that parents can work, especially during the summer months when schools are out. You can help with reading and understanding technical or legal documents or translation. If you have the privilege of voice, you can contribute either if there's a situation where your voice will be received in a better way than a person of color's voice in a certain situation, you can speak up on their behalf. But if your voice is withheld so that a person of color's voice can resonate louder and you can stay quiet. People of color's content by consent and without centering your views on the matter and without being performative about it. So if you're interested in furthering this conversation and taking other classes that I teach, you can go ahead and put your name and email address into the chat now. It'll be a good way for me to collect that information, or you can take my contact information and reach out to me. My email is anna4hope@gmail.com. Coming up. I'm co-teaching a course on cultural competency with an Ohlone culture keeper, Canyon, and goes for 6 sessions held every other week. This course is specific for environmentally minded folks who want to forge a deeper connection with local tribes and finding solutions for environmental problems. But I'm also hoping to teach more classes locally, and I would like to found an anti-racist cultural trauma, some of these things. So I think that's about all I have, unless folks have any specific questions for me.
Thank you, Anna Hope. Thank you so much. All I have to say now, thank you again, Anna Hope. That was fantastic. You know what you're talking about. I really appreciate what you do. Now, you're in for a treat because our next presenter is Donna deTerra, who's going to show us how to make a tincture. And I'm going to get out of the way.
Hello everyone. There I am. I'm so glad to be with you here today. I'm going to be showing you how to make a simple herbal tincture, which is one of my very favorite things to do. So I'm glad to be sharing that with you today. The herb that we're going to be talking about is Yerba Santa. And this is a evergreen shrub that grows all over Willits. I chose this particular herb today because this is a respiratory herb. It's also naturalized itself where I live, and so in the spirit of harvesting abundance, I chose this one today, and this is what we'll be tincturing. So the Latin name for Yerba Santa is Erudition californicum, and the name Yerba Santa itself was coined by the Spanish priests who called it holy herb because of all the things this herb could do. And they were taught about this herb by the indigenous people who have lived here in what we now call California for hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of years. And many of the tribes that we're familiar with also use this herb. The Maidu, the Miwok, the Pomo, Yurok, the Yuki, and they're still using this herb today. This is a respiratory herb, and it's specific for wet, boggy coughs because its energy is drying and warming and stimulating. And what it does is it lessens the secretions. It also is a tonic to the mucous membranes. It lessens any underlying inflammation. And in general, it's just one of our supreme respiratory herbs. So this is the one we'll talk about today. When we're talking about making a simpler tincture, I want to emphasize the simple part of that today. We're basically going to fill a jar with the herb. We're going to pour an alcohol over it. We're going to label it. And then we're going to shake that every day for a couple of weeks at least, can go longer, and then decant that out, strain it out, and there you have your tincture. That is how easy it is. Now the real art of herbalism is in knowing when and how to harvest the herbs, how to handle them, how to dry them, what method of medicine best brings out their medicine, how to store the herb. So in general, the medicine is already here. The medicine is in the plant. And what we try and do skillfully is keep that potency every step of the way so that our medicine is very potent. The plant's medicine is medicine for us as well. Now, talking about the plant medicine a little further for a moment, we could say that plants speak a chemical language. They can move, they can sway in the wind and so forth, but they can't locomote. They can't go from here to there and change their position. So over the hundreds of thousands of years that plants have been evolving, they have developed a chemical language to communicate with everything around them. And they have chemical components, chemical constituents within them that can repel insects, that can invite in pollinators, that can deter bacteria and viruses, that the roots can put out an exudate that keeps other plants from growing around them. And all day long, their chemical components are fluctuating according to what's happening around them. So it's helpful to know how and when to harvest. In the case of Yerba Santa, this grows on a very marginal soil that can only support small bushes and small trees. And It likes the hot sun, and there's not too many plants that can actually survive in that habitat, but Yerba Santa is one. So we want to harvest this in the heat of the day because one of its main medicines is the resin that it contains. So harvesting it when the heat of the day has brought those resins out, we can harvest in a way that ensures the plant will continue, ensures the health of the plant. So in the case of Yerba Santa, which is a bush, maybe about 3 or 4 feet tall, that will go onto each branch and prune it. We'll cut it right above the leaves, and we'll collect those. And that allows the plant to keep growing. Whenever we're harvesting a plant in the wild, we want to see whatever it is we can do to help that plant. Maybe there's some invasives growing around Yerba Santa. Probably not in the case of this plant, but in general, when you're wild harvesting, you can spread seed, you can employ a number of methods so that the plant will thrive even though you've been harvesting it. We want to bring great respect to our use of plants that are in the wild. So, let's see, where shall we go now? I think I'll sum that up by just saying that in the years that I've been studying plants, taking classes, and teaching herbs, the very best teacher that I have ever had is the plants themselves. They will tell us whether they're in our garden or in the wild. They let us know how healthy they are or what they need, especially in our gardens. Do they need more water or less water? You know, are they thriving the way we're growing them and the way we're harvesting them? These will all be our best teachers. So let's talk about the tincturing. I've got some words here. I hope you can read them. The first word is menstruum, M-E-N-S-T-R-U-M. And this is the type of liquid that you're going to use to pour over your herbs to pull out the medicine. So in the order of strength from strongest to weakest, your menstruum could be alcohol or glycerin or vinegar or water. Alcohol is definitely the strongest, and it's also often combined with water so that you're pulling out the alcohol constituents and you're also pulling out the water-soluble constituents. So with that idea in mind and keeping in my theme of simple, I went down to our local Quick Mart to get 150 proof alcohol. And they informed me that there's a new law in California that prevents the sale of anything stronger than 100 proof. I'll talk about proof in a minute. So, Yerba Santa is an herb that wants a little bit stronger alcohol to water ratio because of all of the resin that's in there. So I ended up buying 100 proof vodka. And this will do nicely. But there's also another possibility, and that is something that Sara mentioned earlier. It's an organic cane alcohol, and it's purchased from Alchemical Solutions in Oregon, and their website, you can see it here, is, to reach them is organicalcohol.com. So a little sidebar here about proof and where that word comes from. So in the 18th century, in England, the Navy paid its sailors in part with rum. And sometimes they were unscrupulous captains who would water down the rum. So the sailors had a way to test the rum to see if it was still potent. And they would soak gunpowder in the rum because it takes 50% alcohol at least to then cause that to burn. So they'd light it, and if it burns, they knew that it was 50% alcohol. And over time, that's been shortened for a general guideline that if you have 100 proof alcohol, you cut that in half, and that tells you how much alcohol is in there. So in the case of this vodka, it's 100 proof. That means 50% of it is alcohol and 50% of it is water. So if you had 80 proof alcohol, which is very common at Safeway or wherever, then again you cut that proof in half, and 40% of it is alcohol and the rest of it is in water. So when you have an herb that needs a potent amount of alcohol, right now this is the strongest alcohol you can get. If you have the organic cane alcohol, even though it's very expensive, it's actually a better deal, and I'll tell you why. This was $24, and right now 1 gallon of organic cane alcohol is something like $130. And even though that's a lot of money, it's very equivalent to this vodka if it was in the volume of a gallon. And the great advantage of having the organic cane alcohol is that that is, for our intents and purposes, pure alcohol. It's 195 proof, so we get to cut that in half and say that about 100% of it is alcohol. So when we're making any sort of tincture and we figure out what's the ratio of alcohol to water we have, then we're actually diluting that organic cane alcohol, and it goes much farther. And when we're doing that, when we're diluting that, we want to use distilled water. And the reason for that is because distilled water is considered empty, and it's more able to pull out the chemical constituents. So, and let's see, where shall we go now? Let's make the tincture. So I've done this cooking show style, as we say, because we don't have a kitchen here. We have this beautiful house of Annie's, and I just feel honored to be working on her grandfather's table that he made by hand. Here's a general guideline for keeping the potency of herbs after you've harvested them. You want to keep the herb and store it in as whole a form as possible. So in drying this yerba santa, I pulled the leaves off the plant and I put them on a shallow basket, or you could use a screen, a tray, whatever you have. And we don't want to heap them up, especially when they're fresh, because this is what's going to happen. I harvested quite a bit to bring some for other people, and it sticks together. You have a mass. We can still pull this apart and use it easily, but when you're drying it, you want to every day just give it a little toss and pull things apart that are sticking together. Okay, I'm going to pause here and I'm going to light a little bit of sage, because this is my own personal tradition or habit, is that before I make medicine, I just light a little sage, wave it over whatever is around here, and what this does is it helps me center. I turn off my phone, I go to the kitchen, I have all my materials there, and I try to focus just on this work that I'm doing to bring the medicine out of the plants. And you could use some other method, maybe even just a little bit of deep breathing, but it's a useful centering to bring your full attention to what you're doing, and in appreciation for all the plants that are giving us. So once these have been dried, I store them whole in a jar, and I want to keep this out of the light. So the three things that degrade plants and herbs are light, heat, and air. So I'm going to store this in the dark somewhere where it's cool, and store it as whole as possible. Okay, and then when I'm ready to make the tincture, I've powdered this up. Let's see, not sure if you can see this here, so I'll just put a little in my hand. This is powdered in a blender. One of the other great things about making tinctures and so forth is you don't have to have a lot of expensive equipment. You can buy tincture presses and Vitamixes and all kinds of things. But you can also go to the thrift store and get a blender for about $8 and dedicate it to medicine making, because after I blended this up, I did have to take my blender all apart and kind of clean up all that resiny stuff that was in there. So I fill a jar about 2/3 with the tincture, with the herb. And then I take the menstruum, that's the liquid that we're going to be using, and I pour it over, leaving about a 1/4 inch up at the top. And then it can be very helpful, especially if you have a dense herb like this, to use a chopstick or a spoon or something to give it a little stir so that you get all the air bubbles out. And you're going to put the top on. And then, very importantly, you want to put a label on it. And on the label, you're going to want to know what the herb is, obviously. I have little codes that tell me where the herb came from. You're going to want to know what percentage of alcohol and what type of alcohol you use. And then lastly, you want to put down the date so that you'll know when it's ready to be decanted. Now there's one more thing that we can put in our medicine, and it's a little bit more ethereal, but that is our intention. And I'll just tell you a quick little story that I like about that. It has to do with Dr. Vasant Lad, and he was in the 70s a primary person who brought Ayurvedic medicine here to this country. And he never used anything mechanical. He didn't use grinders or blenders or anything. He did it all by hand. And one day someone asked him, "Why is it that you do that?" And he thought about it and he said, "Because this way I can put my prayers and my songs into the medicine." Such a lovely thought. So even though I do use a blender, I use electrical gadgets, we can still put our intention in the medicine. And often I'll just put my hands on it, or if we're in a class, everyone puts their hands on it, and we imagine to ourselves, what is it that we want this medicine to do? What are we sending out with our intention? And in the case of this respiratory herb, what comes to mind to me is just ease of breathing. Just being able to take a deep, easy breath. So it's that simple as far as intention goes. Just thinking, what is it that you're sending out? And especially if you're making a tincture for someone in your family, someone in particular, that you can think about them, imagine them well, or whatever it is that your heart says needs to go into the medicine. So that's the next stage, is the top, the intention. And then we're going to give it a shake. And my suggestion is to put it somewhere where you can actually see it. I put the tinctures on my kitchen counter, and then I put a cloth over them because of the light that's in the kitchen. So we'd want to put them on the kitchen counter away from the stove so that the heat isn't there, away from moisture, but close enough so that every day, or at least every other couple of days, that you can take the cloth off and give all your tinctures just a little shake. And what that does is it helps the medicine in here reorganize itself, and all the little pieces then are exposed to the alcohol, which is drawing out the medicine. So we did talk about how to store these in whole form. I want to back up and say, when you're making your medicine, you want to break down the herb in smallest possible pieces. So that's why we powder the herb, because then instead of a piece like this being pulled, the medicine being pulled out, we have hundreds if not thousands of little surfaces that are being exposed to the alcohol and letting that pull it out. If you're using fresh herb, then you'd want to cut that coarsely and put a little bit into your blender, into your mortar and pestle, whatever it is you're using, a little bit of alcohol, and zut that around in the blender or grind it with your pestle and make a slurry. And then add more herb and keep going that way with the fresh herbs. If you decide that you want to go a little further down the road of medicine making, there is a way that medicine makers weigh the volume of the herb and also weigh the amount of menstruum they're pouring over it. What we're doing today is considered a folk tincture, and it makes perfectly good medicine. But if you were, for example, going to sell your medicine, then you'd want to know that every tincture that you put out there, every bottle, was going to be about the same potency. And so there's guidelines that medicine makers use, ratios of herb to menstruum. And a book that I would recommend highly to get you going on this is called Making Plant Medicine by Richo Czech. It's probably all you need to take your medicine to the next level beyond the folk method. And he's a very engaging writer as well. So now we've had our tincture for 2 weeks at least. Sometimes people like to do new moon to new moon to new moon. And it's time now to decant it. So here is a tincture that is went in on 8/8, went on August 8th. So it's been in there for a few weeks, and it's ready to be decanted. The second word up here, macerate, is what the herbs have been doing. We could call it steeping, we could call it infusing, but medicine makers use this term macerating. So the herbs have been macerating, and now we're going to decant it. We're going to strain out the herbs. And the way I'm going to do that is to pour it through a strainer. And particularly with yerba santa and all that's resin, it can really stain things. So that's why we've got this cloth down. I'd highly recommend that, or you could also just put down newspaper. So I'm gently pressing out with a spoon as best I can there. But in this plant matter, there is still a lot of really good medicine. If you have a plant press, you could use that. But what I'm going to do, and I won't stand up so you can see me, I'm going to put it in a cloth and I'm going to squeeze it out. And what I do is get cloth napkins that are of a big weave like linen, and we'll let the plant matter through. And if you can see here, let's see, I'm going to move this, there we go. So I'm squeezing it out. Can you see how much more medicine is coming out with this method? You can also use a potato press, lots of other things if you're looking at this and saying, oh, way too messy. But I personally enjoy doing it this way. So we get all of the plant matter squeezed out, and we end up with, I'm going to say probably about 5 ounces of tincture. The spent herbs that are in the cloth here are called the mark, M-A-R-K. And there is some methods with some herbs where you actually reuse that mark. But in the case of yerba santa, we're going to just compost that, and that'll be that. So you can see how very, very easy it is to make the tincture. So besides being simple, and the fact that you know it's very high quality, you've chosen the herbs, you've stored it and dried it, it's also very economical. So a tincture of yerba santa, here it is, a tincture of yerba santa sells for about $12. And the amount of alcohol I've used today, I figured out ahead of time, was about $8. And if you aren't buying the herbs, if you're wild harvesting or growing them in your garden, then your full expense has been $8. But if you were to buy 5 ounces of tincture, that would be about $60. They're about $12 each. So that you can see that it can be to your advantage in this very, very simple way to make your own tinctures. Especially if there's an herb that you take on a regular basis or want to give away to friends and family. So I'm wondering if there are any questions that have come in. If they are, let me know, and I'll just keep it going here. Okay, there's several other ways that yerba santa can also be used. It can be used as a tea, and I would say from experience that it's a little rough going down, that you might want to mix it with something like peppermint or some other flavor that you like a lot. But we learned earlier from Sara about the vaporizing. So yerba santa can also be used in a vaporizer. It can be used as a steam, where you put it into a bowl and the towel over your head, and you breathe that in and it clears all the way down. Sometimes yerba santa is used in smoking blends. I personally don't recommend that unless you already smoke, but for people who roll their own tobacco or who smoke cannabis, this and other respiratory herbs can be powdered up and put into the blend. I know people who do that both for their lung health, but also over time have done more herb in their formula and less of the cannabis or less of the tobacco. And so in that way, very slowly sort of shifted over to where they were not smoking so much, whatever it was. And let's see, there's also another way to use the herb, which is a poultice. And a poultice is basically a mash of dried herbs, fresh herbs that have been heated up and mashed up and are put directly on the skin, on a wound, wrapped up, and just let that sit. So I'm going to check in on the time now. How are we doing on time, Claudia?
Hi.
Okay. Yeah. A few more minutes?
Yeah, 5 more minutes.
Okay. So there's a couple more herbs that I wanted to talk to you about today. And this is another one that you'll find in the wild. Hold it down here so you can see. This is called mullein. It's Latin name for Bascum thapsus. And mullein is a biennial plant, which means it lives just 2 years. So the first year, it puts up the leaves like this. One of its folk names is flannel bush because it's very soft leaf, and very often quite a bit bigger than this. And then the second year, it dies back over the winter, and the second year the leaves come up again, and then it puts up this incredible flower stalk. And mullein is one of those herbs where every part of the herb can be used as medicine. The root, the leaf, the flowers. But for our purposes today, we're going to focus on the leaves. So you want to harvest the leaves before this flower stalk comes up, because then the plant shifts its energy and its vital force, we might say, from the leaves to the stalk. So in the spring of the first year, in the fall of the first year, or the spring of the second year, those 3 times we could harvest these leaves, and we dry them out and then again store them as whole as possible. And the medicine of yerba santa is very water soluble, so you can make a tea. I'm in the habit of making teas overnight, so I'll put the herbs in my jar in the evening, pour boiling water over it, and let it steep for 4 to 8 hours. I just let it steep overnight. When we infuse something for 10 or 15 minutes, we've made a lovely beverage tea. But if we want to get all the minerals and all the goodness that the plant has to give, then sometimes it takes many hours for that to come out into solution. So then the next day, especially with mullein, I would put it through a rather fine strainer like this, because mullein has a lot of hairs on it, and we don't want to irritate the respiratory system while we're trying to soothe it. Because the mullein leaves are a great tonic for the respiratory system, and it's one that we could take on a regular basis, mixed with lots of other herbs as well. And another herb to talk about is something that's relatively easy to grow in our gardens. It's called Elecampane, Latin name Inula helenium. And this grows to about 4 or 5 feet tall. It's a nice one to put in the back of your garden row. And it has flowers that come out that are look very much like sunflowers. But it's the root of this plant that we want. So we wait until the plant has fully established itself and has grown large enough so that there's some root to harvest. And after the plant dies back in the winter, the aerial parts will fall over with the wind and the rain. That's a good time to dig those roots. And we can use them fresh, we can use them dry, and again, those are also water soluble. You could have it as a tea. If you're using the herbs that are easily made into teas, but you want to make a tincture, then you're going to use the minimum amount of alcohol to keep it preserved, and that would be 40%, which means you'd look for 80 proof alcohol. So, last herb to talk about is this one, which is new to my garden, and I'm really excited to get to know it. It's called Grindelia, and it grows all over the coast, very close to the ocean. And I collected some seeds from over there and put it into the garden, and it took about 2 or 3 years for it to grow big enough. And this is another very resiny herb. It's the aerial parts that we want to use from about here up, where the leaves are in good condition, and we harvest it when these leaves, when the flowers are just coming out and they get a little puddle of resin on them. So it's very easy to see when it's time to harvest. This particular one has gone to seed, and I'll collect the seeds and keep going. I've heard several people now say that they spread out on their land some wild bird seed or wildflower seeds, and what came up year after year from those packets was the Grindelia. So it's not fussy where it lives. It lives both on the coast, and I live on the south-facing slope, so it works well just about anywhere. So there are a few of the herbs that we could talk about that are mostly tonic, but also can help deal with an acute situation. I hope you will give this simple medicine making, the simple tincture making a try, apprentice yourself to the herbs. And in closing, I wanted to say some thank yous. I want to say thank you to the Little Lake Grange for sponsoring this event. Even though we couldn't be in the Grange, it is truly a center in our community. And I wanted to thank Claudia Wenning and Leslie Rich and Annie Waters, who did what we might call the heavy lifting in making this happen today. So, wishing you good health and good medicine.
Before you go,
Yes.
there's a question.
Okay.
Tell us about Down to Earth.
Oh, okay. I do have a small medicine business. I make tinctures, down-to-earth herbs. I sell them at Mariposa Market, rather. Many, many years ago, Mary Ann asked me if I would make some tinctures out of local herbs, which was just a delight for me. And so now, the tinctures that we offer there, 90% of the herbs are either sustainably harvested or that we grow them ourselves. So we have a pretty good idea of the quality. I do use the Medicine Maker's formula for making those, but I want to emphasize again how simple it is for you to make your own, for your own home use for your family and friends. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, everyone, you should be here. It smells amazing. It just smells so good here. So this was our last speaker for today. Thank you very much, Donna. If you don't want to make your own herbs, I think we're all on the same page to encourage you to stay local and organic. And yes, Donna has her own herbal line. I have my own herbal line, and there's lots of local herbalists which we will find ways to promote as well. And again, what Donna said already, I just want to echo that. Thank you to Little Lake Grange to be so supportive and a sponsor. Thank you for Annie Waters for opening her home. Thank you for Leslie King for being this incredible, tideless technical wizard. And thank you for everyone behind these women who supports the cause to enhance community immunity. Thank you all for staying with us all day long. Thank you for giving your energy and your thought and your enthusiasm to the community health. And come over to Community Immunity on Facebook. We will do our best to give you all this information if we can in PDF or any other way, so you can use it, you can play with it, you can share it, you can just enrich your lives and all the lives around you. Thank you again, and see you next time.